This meeting is being held in person and on Zoom tonight. I believe the whole meeting will be on Zoom. You can submit public comments either written through the portal, or if anybody in the room wants to submit a public comment, then through the request card. And can we have the roll call, please?
Director Riffle.
Here.
Director Gleason.
Here.
Director Holman.
Here.
Oops. First item is oral communications on items not on the agenda. Do we have any?
We do not have any items.
Okay. Then next item is review of the agenda.
All right. Good evening, ad hoc committee members. I'm Susanna Chen, Assistant General Manager, and the agenda for tonight's meeting is before you, and we will start with opening remarks by the chair, and then we will move into receiving update from the different working groups. We'll start with the operation and programming group, followed by the site design, architecture, and engineering working group, and then followed by the fundraising and partnership working group. After each group has an opportunity to provide updates, you will together as a group to talk about how to finalize your recommendation from this ad hoc committee to the full board for considerations. And after that discussion item, you will talk about how you gonna present the information at the November 20th, 2024 board meeting. And you also will talk about the report structure. And public will have the opportunity to provide comments for the items on the agendas. And you will also have an opportunity to discuss at the end of the meeting. So that's your agenda for the night. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Since we're kind of back to the public ad hoc version of this, how can the audiences, especially the working group members, expect to participate?
Tonight?
Yes.
They will be able to make comments, and there will be no limits on their time, and then we will give them a microphone so they can speak. And we do ask them to speak, start with their name, identify themselves, so the participant online know who is talking, because they cannot see them online.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a great answer. And also, I notice our staff is taking up the back row. I encourage you to include and incorporate yourself in the discussion tonight, because for the board, I think to really embrace the recommendations of the committee, they're going to be looking at staff. And so the fact that you all have been through this process with us the whole way, I'd really encourage your comments tonight almost more than ever as we put this together. So thank you for being here, and I appreciate your comments.
Right. Thanks for including us. All right. So before I turn the floor back to the chair, I just wanted, like I usually do, I just want to quickly go over the schedule. This is all the meetings that we have held throughout this process. We're near the end of the process. Tonight is the ad hoc committee meeting for you to really compile your recommendations. I know that you may need a little bit more time to really work on the report after you confirm your recommendations after tonight, and we can talk about it at one of your agenda items, how you're going to do that. But the goal is that to have a final report from this ad hoc committee handed over to staff by the end of this month, which will allow staff to put in some accompanying information to your recommendation for presenting to the full board, and get ready for the November 20th meeting. So I will just leave it like that, and we can talk a little bit more about the format, the structure as you get to that discussion item tonight. Any questions?
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions?
All right.
Let's go ahead.
Okay. So I turn it back to the chair, and then let's see.
Okay, I'm going to give the update for the operations and programming working group, but first I just want to give some general comments. And I want to express appreciation from myself and my fellow directors for all of the effort and participation in our 3 working groups, as well as the staff's great effort in supporting the process and enhancing its outcome. And from the start, this has been a new type of working relationship between the community, MidPen staff, and directors. We've defined that, we've adjusted it, and you know, we've changed it as we've gone along and tried to do the right things. We'll still be doing some of that tonight, defining the process that goes from here to the board meeting. I am really proud of how the community and the staff have come together on this, and you know, particularly over the last several meetings here, I think we really have come together, and I want to thank everybody in the working groups for the creativity and effort you put into that process, and the staff for working flexibly with us to share the work and the learning that you've done previously, and to collaborate on solutions with the community. I think everybody has worked hard to bring forward an option. I have confidence that it will align with MidPen's goals and mission. So what happens now, we have, I think, really good recommendations and suggestions from all of the working groups. Tonight, we'll talk about summarizing the key points of the proposal, and we also need to set up a process that where we can consolidate the work of the 3 groups into one report and set recommendations, a set of recommendations to the board. So as Susanna mentioned, she has a suggestion for the rest of the process. We'll discuss that later in this meeting, and in that discussion, we'll need to decide the timeline, the meeting format for that process. And since we do have just 2 weeks to deliver the final report, we need to come out of this meeting really clear on how we'll go about completing it. So with that, could I have next slide, please? Yeah, yes. Or should I just speak from there? Or? Okay. I'm going to speak to these 3 topics, and the first one I'll just speak to on this slide. So we actually tried very hard over the last week to pull together a written set of recommendations, a sort of complete work product of the working group that we could publish today. But for various reasons, it turned out to be very difficult to do that. And in particular, a lot of the work or the recommendations that we have are very intertwined with the ideas about the nonprofit. And we didn't want to be speaking for the nonprofit or doing things that would limit the flexibility of the nonprofit to meet goals that it would share with MidPen. So we are being a little more careful with this and making sure that we're really documenting the output of the working group and not speaking for the nonprofit there. So we will publish that document in the next 2 days. It's the content is essentially complete, but we need to do some more buffing of it. So, all right. The second thing I'll talk about to a subsequent slide is in the October 1st meeting, Director Riffle asked some questions at the end of the meeting about what types of families of programs will there be, how are they each serving the community, how many people will be served, and what are the cost characteristics, and how do they align with MidPen values and with Bear Creek Stables goals. So I'll speak to that. We have a kind of a roll-up of what that might look like in the different phases. And then the last item is some of our feedback on the site questions that we have remaining. So this is a summary of what programs might look like in these different phases. And this takes you through from phase 0, starting out with very much volunteer-focused programs, really not a lot of paid staff behind that, focusing on local audiences, general public. Certainly we think that bringing kids in is a very important thing. And in our, we rolled this up to on the order of 300 people maybe being served in a very early stage. And I thought an interesting reference point was in MidPenn's year-end report that just came out recently. It showed roughly 350 student visits to Daniels Nature Center. That's something maybe later in phase 0, we could be approaching that. I think certainly in the future, we could get to and well beyond that level. So I think that's an interesting point of reference there. And then as we go into phase 1, we would be expanding into additional types of programs, sort of building on the ones that were there before, but also trying to serve different communities. So maybe underserved communities, and then eventually moving maybe more into special needs communities. The other thing that we've done here is to cross-reference against a set of goals that are really aligned with MidPenn's mission and also the financial viability of the solution. So you can see that there are some items that are maybe more, say, volunteer nature focused, really serving the people directly, but those programs wouldn't necessarily draw in a lot of funding. And then you might move towards other programs that are going to be a little more revenue sourcing for the stables. We do have more detailed information behind this that we'll publish in our document. So then that gets to the last item, which is our feedback for site questions. And I think for us, the real key question that we grappled with last week was this question of where are the key site features, the caretaker cottage and the ADA facilities. And there were, one option was where they are in the MidPenn repair plan, and then another option was to move them over to the north side, close to where I think the original parking was planned in the original MidPenn repair plan. And I think both of these are acceptable for programming. The working group discussed this and had a preference for a larger sort of safe and flexible space that seemed to be offered by the repair plan. But we're also not sure that we completely understand the implications of this, and we also don't understand the cost trade-off. So our suggestion would be to at least temporarily carry these forward until we get a better idea of costing. And then we did have 2 recommended additions to the phase plan, but for these, I think timing is flexible, and these could also be things that would be fundraising driven, if that helps. One is, we discussed last week, the small animal enclosure, having that someplace in the main programming area. We could be flexible on location. And then the other one is a modest increase in size of the small round pen, which is down in that lower area. Increasing that a little bit in size would increase the diversity of programs that could be offered there. And then we have a couple of questions here. One is about the caretaker cottage and ADA facilities location. We just wanted to understand if MidPenn already has, say, preliminary information about the costing or any other impact and benefit associated with moving those facilities. And then the other thing, you'll see this on the next slide, that we've made an assumption it's possible to sort of cone off the part of the loop of the road to make a safer programming area. And we would just like to validate if that assumption is okay. So let me go on to that. We took the map that was shown last week, I guess, and tried to sort of map out what is this programming area and different types of things that could be done in there. And to save time, I'm not going to go through all this in detail. This will also be documented in our document. You can sort of see how this, if you can, say, after a drop-off is done for maybe a school group, if you can sort of close off that one loop of the road there, then without using the road itself for programming, it's just creating a safer space to move around in. And on the next slide, I'll show potential way that a program might move around in this area. So we took 2 potential programs. One is a preschool visit and the other one's a docent visit, and just tried to illustrate how you might move around these areas. So you can imagine coming in and maybe drop off is close to where the number 1 is. Then after drop off is done, the cars are out of there. You've kept the kids in a safe place there. Now you put some cones down or otherwise, sort of close off that loop in a soft way so that you're not getting traffic through there during the programming. And then you can move around to these various stations where you might be doing, an equine demonstration by the lower arena there. At least in phase 0, while the acorn pole is still there, you could do nature education around that. And you move into that area near the current hay barn, do some other type of activity there. Then the round pen, you might have sort of a meet and greet with a horse. Go down, not directly on the arrow that I've shown here, but around the corner down to the acorn meadow. You do a nature activity down there, relaxation, snack, and then come up to, we showed the small animal enclosure near number 7 there, come back up and finish up. And then you would sort of reopen the road and do the pickup. And then another example would be a docent-led visit. So this one would be leading people in from the trails. Initially, they would be coming down from Alma College. In the future, they might be coming from the north parking lot. And again, you would go around to these different stations. This one goes a little bit farther afield. It's partly history focused and partly nature focused, but it would use some of the same stations. And this is sort of building on our modular program idea that depending on the type of program you're doing, you'll put together a different set of these activities, but a lot of them would be well defined before, and a program leader could switch from one type of program to another without relearning a whole new set of things. So these are some of our basic ideas. I can certainly take questions, or the working group members can take questions on these. And that's what I wanted to present tonight. Nancy? Or the mic.
Nancy Cole. I'm looking at the first slide, number 4. Is there an area designated for like a picnic table where people would gather? They could come in and informally hang out, have lunch, have coffee. Is that included in that number 4 there?
I don't think it would be well, I'm not sure if it would be number 4 on here. We've talked about picnic tables in general, but I'm not sure if we've identified a very specific location.
Okay, I'm seeing, if I understand right, that you have a program and you have plans, but what I'm asking about, is there an informal area where visitors, people participating, anybody could hang out? And I'm thinking it would seat maybe up to 10, and where you'd have lunch or you'd talk to people.
So I don't think we've just, I mean, in the operations and programming working group, I don't think we discussed that specifically.
Is there room or an opportunity to have that?
So I don't think I'm in a position to answer this.
Wait till the site presentation.
So, so Nancy, if I think when you wait to see these slides that the site planning and architecture and engineering group puts forth, you'll see there are opportunities. I mean, that was our job, not their job. So I appreciate that they've done this, but those kind of fine-grained questions I think are more suited to our group. So if you want to repeat the question when we present.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, let's go on. Is site next?
Do you want to come here? Or? Oh, I can abandon. Okay. Which one you want prefer?
Do it.
Greg, while Karen's getting up and getting ready, just have a question for the program and ops, and this will come in, I think, when we talk about what we're going to present to the board. But was your committee able, or your working group able to come up with, or will you be able to take a cut at any estimate on numbers of people? Because I know our group found or just felt the weight of we got to come back with some dollars, some numbers. And I know that there's going to be a lot of, there's going to be question from our colleagues about that numbers of people. And I was just wondering, in your final product, are you going to feel, are you going to kind of float some estimates, or how you?
So that one slide I showed had numbers in it. I mean, was that not what you were looking for? Or?
Okay, so
what behind the slide I showed is a spreadsheet that has
I'm going to do the site.
number. This is not ours.
No.
It has the number of people that we would expect to have in an individual event, and then how many times a month would you do that event, and then how many months of the year would you do the event. So it rolls up to a total for an individual program line. And then we totaled all of the lines for 1 year to a number of people served. So that was the number in that slide that shows, I think, 288 in the first year, 720 maybe in the second year, or in the phase one. The 288 is phase zero, like the beginning of phase zero.
Okay.
And then there's a larger number in phase two. So that's what there is there. Maybe we could go back to that later and talk about whether that's what we're trying to get to. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, the font here is a little bit small. And there were some handouts handed out in addition to this. So we had three things in mind when we're doing these. One is to show where there's agreement with the staff's either their repair plan or what we came to as a result of conversation with staff. So that was one of our goals. And one other goal was what you were saying, Kurt, was to talk about cost implications. Some of the costs we don't have exactly, but you'll see some of the implications. I think Susanna said last time, and I don't want to put numbers in your mouth, I think you said from your perspective, you'd identified, or staff's perspective, you'd saved about $2.5 million. Did I remember that correctly? Okay, all right. So anyway, so on the phase zero, we agree on everything that's been put forth by the staff. It's like hillside drainage repair, complete the water line to the paddocks, paddock improvements, acorn meadow path and seating, and that could include picnic table and benches, as long as it's not structures and it's movable, lightweight, and staying out of the creekside setback. Maintaining the dressage program area. And several of these, as you'll note on this as well, they are both staff and volunteer effort and driven, which we appreciate that very much. It'll keep the cost down. It's also a way to collaborate and partner more with the staff. The site cleanup, there's a lot that can be done. And I started to list stuff that's even in addition to what staff had identified last week, but there's a lot that can be done. And will make the site much more appealing to visitors now. And as Kurt and others go around looking for funding to help restore the site, it'll also be more appealing to that. The one caveat that we had about the arena maintenance, the staff had indicated adding sand and leveling out the arena, and that's a great idea. The only thing that we were saying about it is that if we do the road course that we're talking about doing, it would be great to be able to use some of that cut to put on the arena. So that's the only place that we have like a maybe. So then we go to phase 1. And again, an awful lot of areas of agreement. The redistribution of the parking spaces from the lower road to the upper road up by the Y, we couldn't agree more. And that saves about $700,000 for that retaining wall. We do understand there might still need to be a small retaining wall depending on what roadway network we do. But the $700,000 savings is clear from the removal of parking space from where it was indicated in the repair plan. Provide program drop-off, of course. Retain the Tevis barn, of course. Manure containment area, of course. The Breezeway barn demo, we agree. The only note that we add to that is to please retain the elements so they might be repurposed on site. Demo the existing hay barn near the round pen. We agree with this. We looked at like reducing the size of the hay barn, and we looked at what was really feasible, what would be optimal. And we've decided that we think staff's approach is the better approach. The only caveat that we have here, it's not even a caveat, the only comment that we have here is, and you'll see this more when we talk about the hay barns, is that would be a great location for one of the smaller hay barns. Some of these are where we have some options or alternatives. This says remove the existing caretaker cottage. And this is the one on the left side as you come down into Bear Creek Stables. We totally agree with that. The building is not in good shape, but we do think that the chimney that's associated with that, if it can be stabilized, would be a great artifact to keep. And then if we can do a platform there, it could be a great program area. We don't know what the cost of that is. Some of the stuff we'll have to learn as we go and as we decide and refine what we are going to go forward with. Several things where we agree again is the stormwater treatment, hillside restoration, mitigation, sewer and septic, water storage. All of those are areas of agreement. So there's a lot of agreement here. Where we have some alternatives to offer is, and we brought this up last time as well, is to look at, rather than demolishing the casita, which is the 2-foot thick concrete wall building on the right, very near the Tevis barn, is to not restore that. We have no intention of restoring that and going to that kind of expense. What we're looking at is to clean it up, remove the plumbing, maybe repair the roof. We don't know exactly until we see more what the conditions are of the building. But it's in a prior report, it was considered to be very viable structure, strong, and again, 2-foot thick walls. So we think there's opportunity for that, not to be habitable space. Nobody's going to live there. But we think it could be great space for some alternative kind of, think creatively, alternative kind of programming space. The restroom, we have a location alternative. Of course, we agree with the need. An alternative location for this, the caretaker house both, is to co-locate, and we've brought this up for a good while, co-locate them nearer the leach field. That's for both economy of construction cost and kind of for a concentration of future potential maintenance issues, understanding what was stated last week about where the potential maintenance might be. It's there needs to be, from the engineers on our group, we want to have more information about what the drop is from where the proposed caretaker cottage is to where our proposed caretaker cottage location is, to see how that drains to the leach field and what the cost implications are of either location. So we're just wanting more information there. But we think what we're proposing is at least considered of further investigation. The hay barn, the staff suggestion is to is to install a 2,000 square foot barn. And that's at a cost of $350,000. What I'm not clear on, and we weren't clear on, if that is installed or if that's the cost of the barn. Maybe Brian knows that offhand. Do you happen to know offhand if that's the cost of the barn, if that's cost installed? It's okay. We'll get to that. But it's a question. It's a question. It's installed. Terrific. Terrific. That's great. That answers that question. The folks in the ad hoc have suggested that more practical for the use of the site is to install 3, maybe 2 separate hay barns at a smaller size, something less than 500 square feet, wouldn't have to be sprinkled. And if you put them in locations that you'll see on the maps, you put them in locations where the hay would be in a location that would be more advantageous to where it's going to be used. In other words, to feed the horses. We think that makes a lot more sense than having one large 2,000 square foot barn. There are a few reasons for that. Just quickly, is from my understanding, listening to all these folks, and I have to agree with Craig, this is the most fabulous committee. I swear to goodness, the hours of time spent and the diligence and the fortitude, I would even say. And when people say they're going to do something, they do it and more. So I couldn't have more praise for this ad hoc. So part of the reason is because, again, from my understanding, is a 2,000 square foot barn isn't going to be utilized because bringing in that much hay, it isn't going to be used in a time that it's going to keep the hay fresh. And if you stack it too high, that presents a danger. So it's more practical from a safety standpoint and from a hay utilization standpoint and a location standpoint, having it closer to the use, to have smaller barns than one large barn. So we think one smaller barn that you'll see near the where the old barn is at the back that we just talked about, would be a great location for one of the barns, and that one would be for grain for the farm animals and for some tools and accessory facility for storage for the farm animals. And then another one up near the stable area. We might or might not, depending on how many horses we end up with, ultimately, we might or might not need a third barn. The area of the biggest, and we've gone back and forth about this, and we've talked with staff about this, and this is probably the area with probably the biggest, I don't want to say impact, but I'm using that word, to the plan. And both offer some advantages. We really talked about this, and we met with staff, and we went away going, well, maybe that would work. And then the more we went away and started thinking about it, the more questions we had. So we put this one back on as our primary recommendation. And I'm really going to let Mike come up and talk about the circulation. Don't mean to put you on the spot here, but Mike's really been the one who's done the physical maps. Pam and Mike have been really the leads on the site planning, having to do especially with the roadways. So I'm going to let him take that. And you have in the handout, let me just go through this real quick and go through the handout and what's on screen real quickly, is some of the reasons that we want to do this is because we feel like in phase 1, in phase 0, we're there. In phase 1, we feel like what this ad hoc is proposing keeps the traffic out of the program area much more, and we feel like it is a way that directs traffic more to the stables area for people who are going to be using the stables. We feel like it provides a turnabout for both people who are dropping off kids to do programs, anyone to do programs, and a turnabout for fire. We want to make it a two-way road in and out, maintain the lower road, which is the higher road on the map, as a one-way. And then again, having to do with surfaces, we want to preserve all of it as gravel. I think we're open to, if it need be, to have the lower road paved to the trail if need be, but ideally, because of horse safety and how they travel and their footing, we'd like to have it all seen as compacted gravel. So there are a few other advantages to this, but I will let Mike speak to that when he speaks to the maps. Mike? And what you're looking at now is phase 0.
Good evening, Mike Bashu. The map that you're looking at is phase 0. Let's see, do I have my cursor? There's usually a way of making that as a cursor. Laser pointer, perfect. And that now works here? Perfect, okay. Little red dot now so we can go see it. I have to find it. There we are. Okay. So the basic that we're looking at, and if you looked at what Craig's, get you two mixed up. Craig's group presented actually falls into this very, very well. Their concerns for traffic activity when people are in programs. And so this is phase 0. And what we're looking at is trying to minimize the most that we can do right now. We would like to maintain the lower road as an inbound road coming into the facility to drop off, and then people would come back around and leave by the upper road. It basically tries to minimize the amount of traffic that we're doing, and we have a traffic pattern in here that shows how everything can go around, come out, and go out the upper road. Again, assuming that about half the traffic that's in here at the time is going straight into the border area, that takes that traffic out of the lower area, and that is a very high priority on most all the groups that we have seen. Do you want me to talk a little bit about the programming areas in here, or? Okay, so if you look at, again, what the operations people were showing, they were showing relatively the same areas. They're showing the Acorn Meadow, they're showing the access trail down to it, and the areas around here in green. The difference that we have done is at this point right now, for phase 0, we're still using the porta potty, which is right here in about the same location that it presently is. And after removal of the goat barn and some of the other areas next to Tevis, this area can become programming areas. Also, I think there's a lot more utilization for the small lower arena, which we could either put panels on or do some modifications to try and make that a very usable area. Okay. The difference that we do to phase 2, correction, phase 1, is we're looking strictly at the upper road being a 2-lane road, gravel being maintained, come down your traffic circle, drop-off area activities for the program people. And again, the only access at this point in time going on the lower road is for staff, ADA people, deliveries, and things of that nature, where the majority of the traffic pattern comes into the traffic circle, turns around, goes back out, or parks in the parking areas if they're trying to go access the trails or whatever. They're going to be using the upper parking area up here. Again, the same areas that we have in green. We have expanded the round pen down here, assuming that we have taken out about 3/4 of the size of the hay barn. We do show the leach field and stuff that is non-active, not able to be utilized for what we're dealing with. Okay, any questions? Go ahead, Anita. So okay, so let me see where I'm getting my cursor.
I was asking if you, Anita Enander, would you point out the additional program areas just for people who may not have internalized all of this yet, in addition to having the oval as the round pin, and there's the program area just adjacent to that, just above it. That doesn't, that and the arena don't change, and the shaded area, the shade area gets bigger because you take the potties out of where they were.
Right.
And that area doesn't change with the, once we can get the stuff out of what's attached to the Tevis barn, but the casita and the caretaker program areas are additions in
And
phase one that
and-
don't exist in phase 0.
That is correct. And the caretaker area, what we're looking at, as has been stated, we would like to try and maintain the chimney. And we're expecting that we could probably take some of the soil from the grading on the roadway and use that to backfill in the area there and try and maintain the same flat surface area that we presently have on the floor surface.
Would you give this
Okay.
back to Susan?
Thanks, Mike.
Sure, you can, there you go.
So I wanted to add, so speaking to the question that came earlier about programming areas. So while it is true that if the caretaker cottage goes to where it was in the original repair area, that would make for potentially a larger programming area up above where you see the blue on the map, the blue indications. However, what we heard, so we have reason to think that putting the caretaker cottage and the ADA where we've indicated them, which is, don't want that, which is here, along here. It's not showing up on the screen, is it? No, it's not showing on the screen.
Okay, didn't know. Who else? There we go.
Okay, all right, good, thank you. So we have the caretaker cottage here and ADA and restroom here. So if those were back down over here and here, it's true that this would be a larger programming area. What we heard, though, in addition to us thinking that this is a more practical, economical location for them, what we heard earlier also is that some of the program areas need to be more private and separated. So one large area didn't seem like, from what we heard, to be the most appropriate and the most desirous by the programming group. So here you have a large programming area here. You have a very large programming here on the Acorn Meadow. Then you have the programming area here, which would be a shade structure, and there's a little office, a little prefab office put there beside that. Then you have this right near, I think, a attractive area right beside Tevis Barn, and this one as well, if we can reutilize the caretaker cottage. And then, as Mike pointed out, there's this space too. So it offers a lot of opportunities. Think of it like if it's your garden, you could have one huge yard, and that's great if you're going to have really large parties. But if you're going to have small areas where you want to read or be quiet, if you want to have smaller gatherings, it's also nice to have some opportunities to have smaller spaces where you can do that, some quiet spaces as well. The other thing that's advantageous about this, from our perspective, is that this leaves, because this is an open program area, it leaves the Tevis Barn more exposed to be able to be appreciated as an historic artifact. So we think that's an advantage to this. And let's see, is there anything else I'm overlooking here? Group, Pam, anything I'm overlooking? The shade area here? This area here? Oh, yes, shaded in terms of color. Yeah, this area is the leach field, so there's no activity there. This is a slide area, there's no activity there. So we're respecting and recognizing that. So I think that's it. These are the 13 spaces that were moved from down here, from down about here. These are the 13 parking spaces. Staff identified at some point in time, I think the last meeting, that they were fine with this being a corporation yard up here. And if there are no more questions about that, one last slide we have. You want to speak to that one?
So this slide has had very, very minimal changes on it over the last period of time. Back to what we're looking at. Our traffic circle is down here. I will apologize. At some point, we need to change the orientation of this to match the other slide. One's looking from an east view, one's looking from a north view, and we'll correct that. But this is what we've been showing. This is the upper road coming in here on this slide. And we have a swale or a drainage diversion to take care of any water coming off of the off of the hillside. Yeah, basically remediation area. As we've stated here before, if we go to raise the arena by a foot to try and just help drainage and clear water away from that area, that happens to be 1,000 cubic yards, which is just about what we're cutting out of the hillside. We currently have our stalls laid out in a rough pattern here. These are like, the green ones are a 24 by 36 stall. And down here in the front, we do have some 12 by 18 stalls. I know there's some people that are looking at those trying to understand if the 12 by 18 stalls are an acceptable size or not. Parking wise, we have some parking in along the west side, hillside here, that we have put in to give general parking. We have a farrier vet area that's placed at the front, and there's parking adjacent to it for the farrier and the vets. We've also sprinkled some additional parking around in the area as physically feasible. And I think if you look down in the notes, we'll see that we have, I think it's about 30-some parking spots in the upper area. So we have more than what's required by the county for the boarding facility. We do show the bat area up here, the 2 bat areas. We have an area reserved up here for the water tank area to go into. And then we have 6 small corral areas or small pasture areas for 2 or 3 horses placed along the upper meadow up there. And then activity down in the dressage area. So this is the general boarding plan that we've had for quite a while with minor modifications to it. If there's any questions, I'll gladly field those. It's one of the changes that was done in this area here. Thank you very much. Find my cursor again. We put in this little wedge right here between the main arena and the round pen. There's approximately enough space in here for a nice little wedged bleacher to go in that would be covered with some sort of a sunshade is what we're looking at. So that if people want to come in there and sit and watch people that are working in the arena or in the round pen, that we have done that to accommodate that. One thing that we have been requested to do, and we have not placed it on here yet, is there have been some requests for some sort of facilities up in this area, probably a porta potty or something of that nature, and that has not been placed on this map yet.
Is this part all phase 2?
What?
Is this part is all phase 2, other than the road proposal?
So basically, the boarding area, other than for phase 0, has no major improvements set up in it. It is cleaning, reshaping some of the things. So this is phase one improvements to go start changing the paddocks and reshaping the boarding area. There's existing somewhere between 30 and 40 stalls in there that are presently usable, that we might have to adjust or do some things with. But that is what our accommodations were, and we were not looking at doing a build out in phase 0.
And the only other thing that I've been asked to point out is that, without going back to the other map, is, or maybe so. This map is, if we do this at the upper road, is to have a narrow pedestrian trail, a walking path to go down also to the stable area along the road. That was a question that came up the last time. And so we have some cost comparisons to do. We have some engineering comparisons to do. And again, it's like a lot of expertise has been brought to this, the staff and the ad hoc, and I'm grateful for all of the effort. So any other questions?
I'm looking at our audience first to see if there's none. Okay. Karen, actually, you just alluded to my first question. So just like I was asking Craig, I'm trying to channel our fellow board members. And, you know, with Craig, I think I remember one of our colleagues talking about the numbers of people and types of people that will be impacted by this. So I think we're going to have to be really clear. I'm speeding ahead a little bit to what we're going to talk about later. I'm thinking about the site. This has all been really helpful for, especially within the working group. I think some of the detail is going to be helpful for our colleagues. But I think the big question they're going to ask, two questions actually, is one, what you were just alluding to, how is this different cost-wise from what we heard back in May?
Mhm.
So is that what you're saying? Is that's what you're going to be pulling together? Because I think that's going to be a very key.
Yes, and
Data point.
yes, and what we haven't nailed down yet is how much of that costing is going to be done by staff. So we're comparing apples to apples, the mid-pen costing versus, let's just say if the Friends were to do the work. So we need to be comparing apples to apples in terms of costing. So we can get numbers, and we have gotten numbers on some things, but they aren't going to be at the same level or rate as what Midpen's numbers are for reasons that we all know.
Right. Okay. That you kind of
So
alluded.
that was kind of a non-answer. I'm sorry for that.
Well, I don't know that I was expecting an answer, but I'm just kind of reflecting on what we're going to have to be ready for.
Mhm.
The second thing I think we're have to be ready for is if I'm one of the other 4 board members listening to, you know, the ad hoc committee or you talking, I'm probably going to be watching staff, because staff presented to us in May to say, this is what we have. And I think our colleagues are gonna want to know, staff, are you supportive of this? Or, you know, have you come to an agreement? Or, so I'm wondering how will you address that piece? Or
So when I was on city council, I often said, because staff would come forward with proposals and recommendations, which is their job, just as is our staff's job. And we rely on their expertise. And that said, I often said that, and no one knows a neighborhood better than the people who live in it. And how that applies to this situation is nobody knows how the stables operates and what the functions are and the needs are better than the people who use the stables. So my response to that question, and it's a good and likely question, is what this plan that we've come up with relies on is how the people who are at the stables, who they're there for, you know, many times a week, have been there, some of them for many years. It's how they see see the site being used to its best utility.
I don't know that makes me any more comfortable.
Well, if the answer that you think board members are going to want to hear is, we agree with everything staff has proposed, then, and I'm being an extreme, taking an extreme here, then, you know, our efforts have been in vain. So, Anita, you had something to add?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest differences is that what we saw in May was a proposal for repair and an ongoing commercial operation. This is a real opportunity and a paradigm shift for what happens at this location. This stops being a boarding stable focused, rather exclusive kind of use, and it becomes a community asset. And I would like to hope that staff can also make that shift with the committee that's been operating and see that this is a very different kind of use of this space. It's something that we can imagine and enable if we choose.
To go along with that, Kurt, I would say that when this came to us in May, I, as a board member, was not aware, and not until the ad hoc got established and we started meeting, I wasn't aware of all the programs that had happened and the activities that happened on this site previously. That wasn't, from my perspective, that wasn't really considered in the May proposal. It was really focused on boarding and not on some of the activities. So I think that also has influenced the site planning that we have done.
Okay. I think at this point, I'm not gonna go any further with this. I think maybe we'll delay until we talk about the how we want to conduct our meeting on the 20th, and maybe even how the report is written up, because I'm still a little concerned.
So the other thing I would say, again, whether it is as a board member here, as a council member, whatever, I think it's really good if decision-making bodies have alternatives and with recommendations, because I've seen a lot of times when alternatives aren't presented and questions get asked, and the response is, well, we didn't look at that, or we didn't explore that. So I think it's really healthy for alternatives to be brought to the board.
So, sorry, go ahead.
In principle, I agree with that, Karen, but I'm just a little bit concerned that when the board then looks at staff and says, what do you think? Which would be a fair question. And so I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be addressing that to Karen and her group, but maybe to Susanna, and maybe we talk about that towards the end of this, but I think we're gonna have that.
Can I ask a question first? When I spoke about the caretaker cottage and ADA facilities location, I said, you know, there are some factors that we're not sure of right now. We'd like to see those things costed so that we could make a more informed decision. So I want to understand, would the same be true of this road modification? Because honestly, it scares me to have such a big modification that we haven't really costed out.
Right.
And I would be really, really worried if we went down a path where that's the only option we're bringing forward, and then, you know, we find out that, oh, the cost is actually much larger than we thought.
Yes. Definitely staff can provide costs, estimate the cost for the different options that is presented by the working group. And you asked the question about the ADA facility, as well as the caretaker house at different location. What's the cost implication? Staff can definitely carry this forward to the November 20th meeting to do the cost analysis. And same will apply to here, that we can definitely cost out the option that's presented here, as well as the options that we presented at the last meeting, which is what we originally agree on to improve just the lower road for phase 1, and then defer the upper road improvement for phase 2. So we can definitely present that options of the cost for the full board's considerations. And as you're thinking about your options, your recommendation to the full board, I will advise you to always we refer back to the goal of this ad hoc committee and the goal of the preserve plan, because your goal of the goal of the ad hoc committee, as we agree at the very beginning, is consistent, is to be consistent with the preserve plan. And I can actually bring up that those goals in the preserve plan includes that it has to be look at the impacts to the natural environment. It has to be looking at it's sustainable, the cost of the proposed improvement, and then obviously you have to have a long-term operator to support the operation. So always refer back to those goals. And then if you ask staff as feedbacks on this particular suggestions, and I will say that if you compare those goals and this, we have concerns about this goals, this suggestion here, particularly the recommendation for widening the upper row, because it will be significantly increase the scope of the project for phase 1. We definitely recognize the need and the desire to separate those circulations, but to meet the goals, especially we're trying to, as part of this ad hoc committee, is to look at making recommendations, especially for phase 1, and something that's more along the line with the original board approved budget, that this the recommendation here will be contradicting to that. It will be significantly increase the budget for this line item. So that's why when staff were meeting with the working group, we feel that we understand their desire to separate the circulation. And we think it's a good goal, but in order to meet all the other goals, we recommended to defer that into phase 2. So that is kind of our feedback.
So Susanna, you mentioned maybe in part answer to the question I asked Karen then. So do you think we'll have some costing by the 20th?
Yes.
I'm thinking we need to have costing, but
Yes.
that's not very far away.
That's
So-
that's our commitment, and that's why we need your final recommendation and your report by October 30th.
Yeah.
So we have a little bit of time to do those cost comparisons.
Okay.
And so to go along with your recommendation. So
Right.
the full board actually have all the information before them to make their decisions.
Got it. Thanks.
We have other questions?
Bob Alexander, part of the site working group. And I'd like to extend first accolades and you know, all the due diligence that's been done to date. But Director Riffle, you mentioned a couple of times, you know, if we had a Google Analytics, we would be talking about impressions and clicks and, you know, different metrics. And I think it's appropriate that we would talk about impressions because, for example, if we were to do the lower preserve development as it was proposed and as we had come up to the repair plan, there were several crossings on the creek. And each of those crossings represent an impression, an opportunity, so that hikers or passersby have the impression and have the opportunity to approach. So in terms of numbers and how we might, you know, make these impressions and be of a higher value, or, you know, in terms of sheer aggregate numbers, I think that's very relevant. And if we are to proceed like we anticipate, you know, that the lower preserve development will, there's a great deal, you know, at least 5x. You know, we can certainly intuitively imagine maybe 10x what Director Gleason has presented to us were the impressions that were made by programs, by students, by, you know, the impact that was made directly through a program. However, you know, really there's a multiplier, just like in the case where someone who's mentally ill their family, that person may be positively impacted. Well, there's 5 or 10 people that are now not in crisis because of that one family member has kind of emerged from where they were into a much better place. So I think there's a multiplier. I don't know how do we scale that. I think, in terms of sheer volume and impressions and people's opportunity to come across the creek, we can say intuitively there's a great deal more positive impressions that'll be made into the general public than, strictly program affected individuals in the first person. So I just wanted to submit that idea, and maybe it's kind of a gray area between the working groups, and maybe we can go out and we can try to quantify and put metrics to it so that there's a more objective measure of the positive impact that we have to the general public.
Thanks. Do we have any other questions? Okay.
Jenny Whitman. Another way of looking at another perspective is there's a population of people that we're not reaching. And as a docent in Trail Patrol, I noticed that. So I think this is an opportunity for the stables to help open space reach teenagers, people that wouldn't otherwise be reached. The potential is tremendous, and I would look at it more from that perspective than cost, because it totally not only ties into the mission statement, fulfills the mission statement with what we're proposing here.
It wouldn't otherwise.
Bringing young people into the preserve that wouldn't otherwise be brought in. I've seen it and I see the potential. It's just the tip of the iceberg is what we've done in the past, is what we can do now. And what's really cool about it, we've attracted a lot of really cool people here wanting to work at this. So I like that.
I just want to say that I think that's a key concept that Jenny brought into the working group, and I think that really is true, right? There are groups of people out there that we may not be reaching normally, and people have spoken to us about that before. I think it's a big opportunity here. I think just going back to the point that Director Riffle was making before, I am also very concerned about the cost that gets presented to the board, right? So I think we were faced with a really big number back in May, and it was extremely concerning, right? So I think we need to be very, very careful to understand and manage the cost of the proposal coming in. Even I think we'll have a really compelling proposal from a the point of view of serving the community, and but we still need to present something to the board that the board will actually buy into. So yeah, that's just remains one of my big concerns there.
I don't disagree with what's been said regarding costing. I mentioned earlier that when this came to us in May, I wasn't aware of all the programs and all the activities that had taken place here for years before, and even some of them fairly recently had disappeared, if you will. So one of the questions that had come up is like, how much money are we spending and how many people are being served? And I think whatever we do here, whichever direction we go, I think what we're looking at is the dollars per person served is going to go tremendously down. And so I hope we will keep that in mind as well. So people's well-being and making the best decisions about the preserve and the stables in this case is, of course, we have to be mindful of the dollars, but it isn't necessarily driven by the dollars. It depends on what else we can accomplish for the public, especially.
Okay, if we have no other questions, then let's, sorry? Yeah. Next piece of the presentation. So fundraising and partnership.
Okay, while we get this slide up to the funding slide, do I just hit? Here we go. Just in a way of introduction, what Jenny said was a major theme of what the funding and partnership working group came up with. And I'll end with this, but I'm going to start with it because Jenny brought it up. The boarding facility actually should be, the boarding function should be way down as a foundation of this, not almost as the lead purpose of this. And what we have found with all the organizations that we've talked with, that it's been the people that have been impacted, not the boarding. And so I think we've been kind of saying that all the way around. I think maybe it's intuitive, but I think we're going to have to really pull that into our report and presentation. We can use that to justify the costs, but so many of the organizations that we spoke with, we're a wellness facility, we're a therapy facility, we're a nature facility, we're an experience facility, and oh yeah, we stable horses here, but they're an enabler, they're a foundation, they're not the main purpose we're here. We're not going out and raising money for boarding. We're raising money for community programs. So that was kind of a mindset change that we all kind of went through, I think, that the groups here, but I think we need to change our fellow board members' mindset because they're going into this with that thought. So after 3 months of working on this, I think I got it. You all probably had figured that out long ago, but we have to remember that our other board members haven't been thinking about this since May. So a couple things. The funding and partnership working group, and let's see, I see Annie's here, Suzanne's here, Nancy's here, Marcy's here, and Petra's here. So gosh, great, everybody's here. So they all in one form or another have presented a major portion of the report that we're going to be turning in fundamentally on Monday. What I'm going to present is kind of the last two pieces. The last two pieces are the pros and cons of the approach that we're recommending, and also the recommendations that from a funding and partnership point of view that we're coming in with. At the end of the day, though, everybody's going to say, so, okay, Kurt and group, how much money can you raise? Well, stay tuned. I'm not going to have a number for you, but I'm going to tell you how we're going about trying to come up with a number. So this was the foundation that you heard about on the 26th. And this is how we segmented, if you will, our funding universe. And we segmented that out because of all the organizations we spoke with, they kind of fell into these categories. And roughly size of each segment is roughly the potential that we are sensing. Again, not hard numbers, but what we are sensing from the organizations that we spoke with about the funding potential that we have with this. And also on the side is it's really that bottom two sets, if you will. It's the community. It's basically the corporate sponsors. It's the people of significant worth. If you talk with the organizations that we've talked with, those millions of dollars that were raised over a 10-year period, it wasn't from lessons. It wasn't even from therapy sessions. Those were the kind that kept things going on a day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month basis. Those sessions actually built awareness, which led to the significant donations over that 2, 6, 10-year period that actually came in, is because of those, if you will, those top portions that fed to the bottom portions to come up with that money. So that's kind of the philosophy that we learned as we went forward with this. And you've seen these slides before, but basically we used those segments. We attempted to phase out, okay, what partners would be possible, if you will, or that we could pull into each of the phases. This phasing can vary. The partners, types of partners can move on different segments, but This basically, and again, you've seen all of this. This basically then drives the funding sources that would come out of this. So what we're working on from a kind of a financial model point of view is building on the program and operations, which is basically probably the first two lines and maybe a little bit into the third and fourth lines, right? The numbers that you all have driven. And then what we want to do is add to that with basically the funding, the donation, the gala, the corporate sponsorships, the events that a funding campaign would put together to overlay on top of that. So this is fundamentally what the group is now populating, is they're breaking this down by these categories, by these organizations, and basically we'll come up with then a number for each of these cells. All right. And is the number going to be hard? Is the number going to be certain? Heck no. It's going to be based on our best guess from what the organizations are that we spoke with. Okay. And just to add to what I think has been said, I think there is, well, in fact, I'll hold that thought until we get to the pros and cons and the recommendations. So as far as the approach that we have been using from a funding point of view, but I think it works very nicely with the programs and operations folks, is this approach is there is a very broad selection of activities that benefits the community. And that came out again and again by the other organizations that we spoke with. And I think that helps answer some of the issues that some of our board colleagues have. The nice thing about that is that's quite a varied portfolio, if you will, that can drive funding. You know, whether that's family or homeschool or Boy Scouts or you know, other groups of individual, and then the therapy, that's going to drive potential funders that said, you know, my child or my friend or my parent, for that matter, really benefit from that. I'm willing to make a donation. And again, that will build from year 0 to year 2 to year 4 to year 10. That's going to just build and build. The fundraising approach basically is that, again, what we've heard from other organizations has been, you need some professional leadership or guidance. Fundraising is a science and an art. But fundraising is also boots on the ground, if you will, is a lot of volunteer work. And so we have I think have a nice combination of a lot of very a volunteer base. And the 5 people that are here tonight have been wanting to go raise money, but I've been holding them back. So I think they're indicative of a lot of horsepower actually that can be directed with a professional fundraiser. That we think can actually be quite effective, built on the programs, you know, that Craig and the others that we've talked about here. Also, is the nonprofit structure really builds a nice way to create awareness and basically collect and solicit the money at the same time, almost within the same function. So there's some synergy, I think, in this nonprofit idea that has been floated about the people that are closest to the action are the best in talking about what the organization does, and that's what solicits funds, is people that can talk very knowledgeably about what the you know, what the facility will provide. The cons is it's going to take multiple years to ramp up fundraising. We are not going to have $4 million by the end of year 1. It's going to build over years, and especially for capital projects, especially for those 5 or 6 zeros, in order to pay for some of these structures. So we're going to have to factor that into what can be built by when, if we in fact need additional money. It's also difficult to project the sources and timing. You talk with any of the nonprofits that we've spoken with, and it's all over the map from year to year. So they were not ones to predict. but they do have a track record, and we can kind of extrapolate from what they've done. You've probably heard this before, but grants sound great, but grants are really hard to do because they're fickle. They take a lot of work in order to get them, and then once you get them, you have to report on them. So there's a lot of ongoing work that grants. So there's a lot of grants out there, but there's a real cost benefit that we have to, and that comes back to the professional fundraiser. I think is going to be very key in helping us with this. And then finally, again, the organizations that we spoke with, we found that most of the organizations that were successful had a really effective core group of people that were in the leadership position, if not one person or a core group of people. So the effectiveness of raising money is really going to be on the, if you will, the quality and capability of that nonprofit. So recommendations, I'm going to kind of speed through these because we've kind of talked about them in one form or another. Based on 15-person months, we talked with probably closer to 70, 75 organizations now. And I want to really emphasize in the second bullet, what we heard is nature-based animal-assisted education and therapy. That really resonated with a lot of the organizations that we spoke with, to say there are not enough facilities like that around here. So that's kind of the stables piece, but there are not enough facilities that offer that, whether that be animal or horse-assisted therapy. People got excited when they saw, wow, you've got something in the middle of a preserve that provides this kind of an experience. You've got a gold mine there, and we would love to be involved. And that kind of goes to the third bullet. This, as I said before, boarding is primarily a foundational structure. Taking advantage of this beautiful preserve that we're in, and the programs are layered on top of the boarding, presents a really unique opportunity that not many places have. We talked about the nonprofit structure and the ability to maintain the separation from the district. For those that read the report from the 2019, that was the big concern, is the consultant basically said, district, you can go raise that money, or you better find somebody that's really good at doing that. And for those that were here, the board said, no, the district shouldn't be in a money raising point of view. That's why we created POST. So we really need an organization that can go out and do that. In 2019, we really didn't have an alternative to go do that. We didn't have time to create an organization to do that. So that's why we kind of went with that, if you will, the repair option, because that was the least cost, or the most cost-effective way without needing to raise money. We're not in that situation now. Let's see. We talked about the fundraising, the phased approach that resonated really well with the other organizations that we spoke with. A little bit of a kind of a pay-as-you-go. The idea of kind of a funding checkpoint at the end of phase 0, to say, so how are we doing, and how is the trajectory of funding looking, to maybe start deciding how do we implement phase 1 based on the fundraising trajectory that we're on. And that's when we talked about the grants management contractor maybe coming on board towards the end of phase 0 to really get going into phase 1. We talked about the timing and prediction, 10-year, we talked about that. This came up again and again, is this community awareness is key. It's compelling, inclusive, inviting, neighborhood-oriented, story-based communication. Again and again, that's what we heard from the other organizations. That's what gets people really involved. And that led to an inviting and dynamic social media presence, as well as word of mouth. Those are the most effective ways of getting the word out that we're going to have to really rely on this nonprofit to be able to build for us. So that completes our report. We are now working on putting the final numbers in, but this is the basis of which those numbers will be based on. So questions or comments? First, I'll ask the Funding and Partnership Working Group, anything that I forgot or got wrong? Suzanne? No? Oh, okay. 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 Any other questions or comments? Oh. Come on, I shot questions at you guys. You need to shoot questions at me now.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does somebody else have one? No. Oh, Pam.
Thank you, Pamela Warren. I was at the meeting when we decided to go repair plan, and the idea of the fundraising person was let go. And the person did make a lovely presentation.
This was the consultant that we had
Yes,
hired, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would think if I was listening to this again, and I'm listening to it in a very positive aspect now, that I'd really want to understand how you're going to get it right this time. Not that it was wrong last time, but how you're going to improve that so it's more successful. Because I think everybody remembers that night, and it really was sort of a sad occurrence.
No, good point. Anything else? Okay, good. And I guess,
I had one other.
oh, yeah.
I think you've more or less said this, but I just wanted to understand, you talk about large grants and donations would only be expected in phase 2. So should we be assuming that in terms of capital cost of phase 1, there's not going to be a big lever?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, Greg. I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm thinking our colleagues on the board were hoping that we would, the money would come in and then we could spend it. And I just don't think that's realistic thinking. And I think we are going to have to be comfortable with, I can't think of another way to put it, but there's a little bit of a build it and they will come. All right. We're going to have to invest in the infrastructure. We're going to have to then build the programs, allow the programs to grow on top of that. And that's then going to attract money. And so there's a little bit of a leap of faith here that frankly, I'm a little uncomfortable with, but I'm not sure how to work around that.
Yeah, certainly a leap of faith in November. I think we can demonstrate things in phase 0.
Yeah, I agree.
Before the big spending comes.
Right.
So I think that's a big opportunity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
In fact, Greg, building on that, we may, and someone's got to pay for it, but I shouldn't, be very careful. In fact, Karen says, Kurt, you're going to go out and raise the money. No, I'm not going to raise the money. The group raising the money. They may need to figure out how would they bring a funding professional on board sooner than the end of phase 0, like we had talked about, just because of getting that momentum and getting some of that dollar flow starting. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, how that math works out, if you will, of how they're paid for. Yeah, Nancy.
No question, but when I say Kurt's going to raise the money, I mean,
Yeah.
umbrella. I was trying to
Right.
come up quickly with what the CURT might be an acronym for, but
All right.
I wasn't able to do
All
that
right.
quickly enough.
Right.
Nancy Cole, I hope I'm not out of order with my comment, but we talked about the later phases with a large amount of money that could come from grants. In Silicon Valley, there are numerous grants that give large amounts of money, but they definitely have qualifying conditions, and those tend toward conservation, environment, education, reaching to the underserved, and community building. And I didn't see a lot of opportunities beyond those specific qualifying requirements. So if we're looking to those larger numbers, our programs are going to have to fit with those qualifying requirements.
I do have a question, and it's, you know, these thoughts are swirling around, so I've been questioning for myself the appropriateness of this question, so bear with me for a second. Sure. Is that better? These thoughts are swirling through my head. So in fundraising, matching is a very powerful tool.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's been talked about in your group. And I was trying to think when I said, like, I don't know about the appropriateness of this question. Is there a way that within the structure and confines of Midpen's structure, if we could, and I'm going to totally make up numbers here, and I'm going to make up obscene numbers because I want it to be like understood as like, this is just for conversation purposes. Let's just say the board says, we're going to put up $20 million. And we're going to put up another $10 million for matching purposes. So can Midpen do that?
So I'm going to attempt to, would you like that to be answered, or is that
Yeah,
more
I'd like it to be
rhetorical?
answered. If
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can,
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I don't think Midpen should do that. I think the nonprofit organization, just for the lack of a better word, or the funding organization that we have, should position it that way. Is Midpen is, I mean, it's public. We have how much, we know how much money we have to put into this. Can say is Midpen isn't going to spend this money unless we're able to come up with a certain amount of money to basically show that this is feasible. So there's a little bit of that of a justification that actually is going to be the case, right, Karen? Is Midpen's not going to spend the money unless they can see if that's what the board decides. That's, to me, that's just being very open with the public, the funders, if you will, that public-private match, that Midpen isn't going to go forward with their $4 million unless we can come up with $2 million or whatever the budget requires. Right? So
Well,
I'm not sure that Midpen, if you will, has to do anything. It's really the fundraising angle to it.
I would hope, though, to add on to what you're saying, though, I would hope, though, that when the board considers this, that it's not a situation where the board says, we're willing to spend $20 million, just use that number again. We're willing to spend $20 million, but only if the public comes up with this. I'm hoping that's not what happens at the board. Because we have a commitment to, you know, well, I'll stop there.
Anita Nander, I think there's a legitimate question that you'll need your attorney to answer about whether there is a way to construct a private-public partnership vehicle in doing this, or if that's precluded if you do the nonprofit as the operator. I don't know the answer to that, but I know as a city council member, that was a question I asked at some point, and it might apply here.
Jenny Whitman, when Craig Britton made a preliminary list for Bear Creek Redwoods Preserve, Bear Creek Stables wasn't on that list. So the programs were done despite that nobody really knew that the stables was there. We had a corporate group come out and do a work day. About 25 workers came out, and people had no idea there was the stables there. And they did amazing work. They worked all over the property. And I think just when the word gets out and there's actual legitimate advertising about the stable or about the property and the programs, I think you're gonna get a really healthy response.
Right. Right. Just one other thought to add to what Anita and Karen just talked about. Staff who was here with Mount Umunham. So remember the Mount Umunham Conservancy? And remember that, what was it, the 2 million that they were going to raise or something like that, which ended up being about $100,000. But I remember at the time, we were saying, this is what we can do if they were going to raise the money. I mean, I think that's what, Brian, maybe I'll look at you. I think we had something similar to what Karen was just referring to. I know it was enough that we didn't make commitments because we depended on them raising money, because as it turned out, didn't the case, but I remember there was some logic, so.
Yeah, so excuse me. That was exactly what the board authorized. At the time, it was, we will only move forward with the radar tower repairs if the M&M Conservancy could raise, I think it was approximately $2 million. You know, that they didn't make a lot of progress. They had some commitments on doing that, and then it got designated as a historic resource, and the board decided to move forward on the project with public funding. And you know, the total amount that the M&M Conservancy was able to garner was $100,000, which they did eventually donate to the project.
Okay. If there are no more questions, let's move on to our next agenda item, which is, sorry, Peg?
Watching it on Zoom.
I think our rule was was in person only for working group members. I think that's how that's been our convention whenever we've had this format. Yeah.
Correct, there will be a public comment.
Yeah, there's public comment.
Want to submit the public comment form. I do have that in.
Okay, so we're on to agenda item E to finalize the ad hoc committee recommendations for full board consideration. And so do we have any discussion about how we want to approach this? I have some ideas, but I'd like to hear others.
Oops. I'm anxious to hear what you have to say.
So I think the general idea we had was we want to identify what are the key points of the proposal that, you know, then we'll go off and we'll fill in the details around, right? So it's really, what are the things that after we make this decision, we don't want to be changing. There could be cases like we talked about with the site where there are multiple options that we're carrying forward. So I think one possibility is to talk about, you know, what are the areas and the specific bullet points or line items where we need to make these decisions around, you know, the management structure, the site, programming, fundraising. I have some of those that come from the document we've been putting together. I think we have for the site, I think we have a pretty good starting point in the document that that the staff put together. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah. What do we, just a quick question. What do we want to get out of this discussion? Is this basically structuring what we are going to how we're going to structure our attachment, if you will?
I think so. It's it would be sort of the outline and the key decision for each point there, right? I think that's what it would be. So we will produce a report for the board by the end of this month that will go into the board packet for the 11/20 meeting. And we can think of that having some outline. It has the, each outline item is a key point of the proposal, right? So I think tonight, we don't need to fill in every last detail. That's going to be a process that comes after. But we need to decide on what those key points are, right? So for example, one key point of the proposal is that a nonprofit is becomes the manager and operator of the stables. I think we need to write down, what are there additional bullet points below that are fundamental to the proposal that we're making? And then between now and the 30th, we need to fill in, the text or other detail behind that, right? But without changing the fundamental proposal.
So I guess I'm going to start building, if you will, a little bit of that kind of the structure of, I think, what you might be talking about. And I'm going to come at this from our fellow board members and kind of the questions that I was asking of where we left this. And do you have an answer over there for us, Bob? One of and Suzanne, I guess I'm going to look at you, is what the board is going to have is the report that they saw in May, right, as reference. And go ahead.
Yeah, so so we're gonna have a staff report to for this November 20th board meeting, as we usually have. And then and as I mentioned last week, we anticipate this staff report will have 4 key sections. It will have the background. It will have the process, this process that we went through, and then it will have your recommendations.
Right.
And then we'll have kind of the options for the board to consider for the stable.
Right.
And the option will include your recommendation as well as what was presented at the at the May 14 board meeting.
Right.
So you will prepare a final report kind of to document your recommendations of the different elements, the site, the programming, the fundraising. So that will become an attachment to the staff report.
Right.
That is going to be the backup of, in the staff report, we will probably summarize your recommendation, but then the backup is going to be in the attachment, and that's the report you are preparing, and you're talking about how to compile that.
Right. So fundamentally, the ad hoc is going to be, if you will, boiling down and presenting option 5, right? I think in May they had 4 options, or we had 4 options, right?
I think
3 or 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. And basically our work is now going to present at least one more option for the board to consider.
That's correct.
Because those 4 are still on the table.
That's correct.
And then whatever we come up with.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, Craig, maybe I'm saying the same thing that you said, but it's just the way I think, is how we structure. Here's the option that we are presenting, and to get to what it is our recommendations are, what we're deciding as an ad hoc. We're deciding as, yes, there's a lot of potential here, and this option, the option that the ad hoc is that we have I don't want to get too far into the weeds on the wording, but we have a nature-based, animal-assisted opportunity to provide services for the public. Again, building on this, it's not just the stables, it's for everything else. So this is the option that we then want to lay out. And here's the elements of the option, the management structure. Here's the elements of the option. Here's the build out, if you will. Here's the option of, here are the programs that are being offered and what's being, what the benefits of the community will be. Here's the fundraising capability, and here's the cash, if you will, the business model of what this can be.
Yeah.
And then out of that comes, and I don't know if we want to do a pro-con, recommend a conclusion or something along those lines. But to me, that is what I see. That is that option 5, which basically makes up our report.
Right.
So I think what we need to decide tonight is number 1, are we going to go forward with it? I think the answer is yes. And number 2 is, what are the, if you will, what are the key elements of each of those, each of those sections, which I think we've articulated, and it's just now, how do we capture that in our report?
Right.
Is that, just before I go to turn it over to Karen, is that what you had in mind with that agenda item, is our recommendations? When you say
Yes.
recommendations?
So, yes, and you as a group, you need to decide what is the key elements that you're recommending to the full board. And we've been talking about a phase approach, and I think that would be a pretty,
Right.
it's a good way
Absolutely.
to summarize your options, and then and good way to explain your thought process about how this is gonna work and how that different from all the other options that's already presented. And we have multiple study discussion sessions, and then we kind of lay out the different phases that you envisioned, and what the improvement is associated with each phase, and then also the programming and the fundraising, and how those activities are tied to each phase. So I think that it will be a good approach to put your report together.
Yeah, I think last week, that makes sense. I have 2 comments. I think last week, G-Money, that we also decided that it would be fine if our ad hoc presented, a couple of options, an alternative also to the board. So we decided that. So, and agreed to that, and staff was in concurrence with that. And then the other thing that's going to be really,
Wait, Karen, when you say alternative, what do you mean, in terms of like the site plan alternatives, or?
yeah, well, yeah, that's one. That's
Okay.
one. So for instance, about where's the caretaker cottage go? You know,
Oh,
That's,
sure.
yeah. What's the road configuration? Those are 2 major ones, I think. Maybe the barns might be an alternative. Yeah, because I don't know. We don't have the opportunity to find out like how the other groups, at this point in time, we don't have an opportunity to find out what Craig's group, for instance, thinks about the barns, or do they have an opinion about the barns? So I'm not quite sure how we get around that, or if we just, the site planning says the barns should be distributed like this. So I'm not quite sure about that. And then the other thing, it's going to be really important for those who dig deep, and we do have some board members that dig deep, it's going to be important that if our report's an attachment, then we need to have appendices, I guess you could call them, or attachments to the attachment, because people are going to want to know, well, how did you come to that decision? How did you come to that recommendation, talking to our group? So, so that as well. Because there's been an awful lot of good work done, and so we don't want to lose that. Right?
Yeah. And if as a committee, you wanted to advance a couple site options in your report, I think that's doable. And staff can provide costs to associate with each site plan options that you want us to bring forward for the full board's considerations. That is fine. But it's just a little bit more work for us, so we definitely need your report by October 30th.
Well, I'm certainly in favor of what Karen just said about it as far as options, but I'm not sure the board's going to care about where the restroom's located. I think what the board is going to be concerned about is maybe 1, 2, or 3 options and the cost implications or the programming implications that they have. I mean, maybe down in the appendix, we can talk about the restroom location, but
Right,
I think at the end of the day, it's functionality and form, if you will, or the form and function
Right,
of,
right.
of what we're able to offer the public.
Yeah. Some,
So-
I can see if you want to present multiple options, and some options may have significant cost
Yeah,
difference,
right.
some may not. For example, the road improvement, and that we anticipate it's going to be significant cost difference. It depends on the options that you want us to look into. As for the restroom locations or the caretaker locations, we kind of talked about it at the last meeting, and we don't think the cost saving is that significant in the grand scheme of things. And really, it's down to which one works better for operation and
Right.
programming.
Right.
So it depends on the element. And
Right.
but if you want us to look at the cost, regardless, the operations need, and we can definitely do
Well,
that.
but I'm wondering, Karen, and to the group is, can we, if you will, boil down all the different options we could have at the site, maybe to 2 or 3 kind of options? Because it's going to be driven, if you will, by cost, and it's going to be driven by what the programs could be. So, I mean, there's many, many, many different options if you think about all the different things that we could move around, but could we get it down to maybe 2 or 3 different categories driven by those 2 factors?
It could be, there's, I'll go back to the barns because it's probably a simple example. That could be our recommendation. I just don't know if there's any objection to that recommendation from, the ad hoc groups, because we haven't had that discussion. I have one question for, maybe it's Susanna. We thought we knew the answer to this, and then it's come up recently, so we're not sure we do have the answer to this question. Is, to be clear, so the caretaker's cottage, if it goes where the current casita is, are there retaining walls associated with that location? And if so, what's the cost of those
Yeah,
retaining walls?
we need to look into that for further as part of our evaluation. So I don't have that numbers right now. I have asked staff, and we need some time to look into that.
But retaining walls are required if the caretaker's cottage goes there where the casita was. Retaining walls are required, right? That's been our
The
understanding.
current design does include some retaining wall at the
Okay,
current
all right.
design locations.
Because
Yes.
that affects our recommendation of what the cost would be.
Yeah.
Too. So okay.
Yeah, like I said, that we can provide the cost comparison for both
Okay.
locations.
There's a number, and I couldn't quite tell if it was associated with that or not on one of the drawings back from the May 14 report. It was $350,000, but I couldn't quite tell. We couldn't quite tell if is that the retaining walls? So it's a question I'm putting forward. You don't have to answer it right now.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I think to answer your question, Kurt, I think some of these things we can boil down to, 2 options, but I'm a little sensitive to, I don't want to ignore, there are people here who haven't weighed in on from the other ad hocs who haven't weighed in on some of these things.
Well, we
We
haven't.
could do that now.
We could either do that now, or we could do that, within the next few working days, if you will, because, our deliverable is due on October 30th.
Mhm.
Right? And I'm wondering if we kind of send each of the working groups back so for example, your working group is to say, can you kind of distill this down to those 2 options and then float that back out to the other working groups, just to say, how's this feel? Can you build around this? And
If we, and that's one way of doing it, and I'm not particularly objecting to that. I'm just thinking, since we're here, if people have access to, one of our site plans and they have questions about it, if we do it here, just spend 30 minutes, if that, then we could ask and answer questions that might help just get it done.
I'm all for getting things done. So if
Is that,
if
have
that
we lost,
would-
have we lost too many people to do that?
if we actually could do that in 30 minutes, that's my only concern.
Have we lost too many people to do that? Seems like some people have.
Which side, this plant?
Pam is here. What is your group represented well here?
Well, I guess
Looks like.
my feeling is that we've kind of, I don't know, I guess my thinking going into this was that the critical aspect of the proposal coming out of this is this phased repair plan, right? Where we're essentially saying, you know, we could make this sustainable with the phase 1 improvements. And then, you know, phase 2 could be more contingent on fundraising. So the big thing that we would be asking Midpen board to sign up for would be phase 1. I would want to know, you know, what these different options cost out to, but
But we
I'm-
won't know that tonight or by the time we write our report for the board, I don't think.
yeah, I'm just wondering if, is that how we want to spend our time tonight? Because I think, you know, for me, we've kind of bounded the site options that correspond to this phased repair plan. And I think the staff would know how to cost them. So I'm thinking we also need to define the other things that constitute the, you know, sort of the essential components of what this proposal is. And for me, the repair or the site plan is actually the best defined because we already have this document that lays out the different options, right? That sort of bounds these options. I don't know.
This is something you said that if we were to do, you know, hold the options for a minute. If we were just to say, okay, board, we could do this by phases. In phase 0, this is how much it's going to cost, both in terms of staff, in terms of dollars, and this is the program, this is the community benefit that would be, and this is the amount of money that we could do. We kind of know that, right? I mean, if site folks have said phase 0, we're there. I mean,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we can have
And
pretty solid number for phase 0.
Program folks, you kind of said, hey, with phase 0, we know what we can offer, or yeah, we could probably recommend at least what we could offer. And I think the funding folks, I think we could say, well, this is how we'd probably start in the fundraising capacity with that offering in those facilities.
And the ad
That
hoc,
work?
and the ad hoc agrees with that too. It's on our chart here, phase 0. The only caveat that we had was like what to do about leveling out or improving the arena
Right,
to maintain. That was the only site, which is in a way kind of a nit.
right, right.
I want to make sure also it's really clear that we don't lose sight of this, that the reason phase 0 is phase 0 because it can be accomplished without a conditional use permit. So just make sure we don't lose sight of that. And phase 1 is triggered by, once we get a conditional use permit, we can do some of this stuff.
Yeah,
And
I
just wanna make
do-
sure we're all clear on that.
Yes, excuse me. I do think defining phase 1 is very important for the full board because this group needs to demonstrate you have a plan that is feasible to move forward and it's not just kicking the can down the road and for 2 years later and you come back to say, your phase 1 is still $10 million and then we still cannot, the district cannot fund it and then your fundraising cannot, you know, somehow meet that gap. So I think it's really still important to define phase 1.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just thinking about our recommendation is phase 0. Here's what we can do. And
Mhm.
actually, phase 0 is pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
I mean, that's
It
kind
is.
of what we got.
Yes.
And operations guides and program already has in
Yes.
mind.
Yes.
So all we have to do is almost document that we already know, right?
Yeah.
So phase 0 is easy.
Phase 0 is pretty solid, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah. And make it very clear of when are we at the start of phase 1.
Yes,
very clear that
yes, we can
when
do
we,
that.
quote, start at
Yeah.
phase one.
Yeah.
And then at phase one, and I'm kind of looking at you, Suzanne, but talking to the board, if you will. Phase one then is these are the decisions, or these are the options that we'll have going into phase one,
Right.
right? And there's a lot of site, I think there's site options.
Yes.
We have to start making some decisions on site options, right?
That's right,
Is that
because
what drives, if you
yeah.
will?
that's when you put in significant investment into the site, right?
Right.
Yeah, and then that's what I think the board have difficulty last time, because the cost estimate for the repair plan is from 9.5 to $10.5 million. And that is a significant gap between what
Right.
we set aside for the project. And that's why we are here and trying to look for ways to kind of address that concern.
But going into phase one, then that's where we can maybe segment down or break down to, okay, we've got 2 or maybe 3 options as to how we approach phase one. And here's how much it's going to cost.
Yep.
And here's the programs that can be offered in
Yes.
each of those.
You can do that. That works.
Okay. I guess what I was just forgetting about is phase zero. We can in effect get a running start here.
Yep.
Which I would think, I'm going to be a little extrapolating, but I would think the rest of the board would say that sounds good as long as we can believe that we're not kicking the can down the road.
Right. Yes.
So we need to really sell, if you will, on phase one of how we could make some potential decisions.
Yeah.
That increases the probability that at least one of those is going to work.
Yes. Yeah. I think so. I'm not board member, but I think I think it's very important.
So in the, I agree with you 100%. And I remember in the chart that staff presented last week, that there were some of the items in phase zero, and I don't know if you're considering them inconsequential or big enough that they're beyond the general manager's authority, or how you were considering those, but you said like pending board authority to do X, Y, Z.
Right. Yes. So the reason we have that note is because the board at your May 14 meeting, you direct the staff to stop all the activities and all the improvement to the stable. We need the board's approval, assuming at the November 20th meeting, the board support your recommendation and say you can resume all those activities. That's when we staff can invest time and resources into those proposed improvement for phase zero. And some of the activities do require some contracting work, that you bring in materials. So those are not currently budgeted, and those needs authorization, for budget to pay for those work and activities.
Right. So could we do this then in phase one, if say we have 3 options in phase one, or just, we could show a chart like this that says, okay, phase one is this, and it shows the site changes that we would do in phase one.
Yeah.
And we would say, this is how much this would cost about. And this then from phase zero, this is the new programs or the whatever we could offer, right? And potentially this is the fundraising capability, that we would have. Okay, that's that's option one. Then option two, we show another slide that says, that maybe fills in more. And okay, this is this much money.
Yeah.
And this is what we can offer, and this is how much we would have to.
Yeah.
And for the board then to say, got it, okay, phase zero sounds like a no-brainer. And of all those, that option two looks pretty good for, we feel good about that.
Okay.
To go forward. I would say, all right, we're almost there. And maybe what we need to decide, is that good enough? Well, I'm thinking out loud here a little bit. How far do we need to is help the board understand what it is we're doing? I mean, could we stop at phase one? I'm just thinking as a board, I mean, we could make that decision. but in effect, that's what happens after phase one then. Yeah, I mean, is that? I'm kind of thinking we're going to have to really think, if we're going to do this, we've got to have a kind of a long-term run plan for this place. And it can't stop at year 4, year 5, and then we have to make more decisions. Or, I don't know.
So, go ahead.
I just want to clarify what exactly you meant by that. Are you saying that we basically mapped out through phase one, we say we could be sustainable in phase one?
Yep.
Anything in the future is, say, contingent on fundraising, future decision? Right, okay.
Yeah, and that's what I'm not sure how comfortable I am with how far we need this to go for the board. But, I mean, do we really need to think long-term as in beyond 10 years? Yeah, that'd be great. Or do we say we'll make another decision at the end of phase one board? Sorry.
Right. I think we at least want to be clear on what was pushed out
Oh, yeah.
into, phase two or whatever
yeah.
future phase, yeah.
Yeah.
So there are some things that could be a phase two. We put them on a phase one map, but the one that pops into my head is, well, there are other possibilities, is, I don't know why I keep coming back to the barns. But the barns, we could leave the existing barn and do the new barns, at a later time. We've priced the barns at $65,000 a piece. That's installed, and that's for a sub 500 square foot barn. So that's 225 grand. There are, I guess, a few other things that could be put out into the future. Depends on what the desires
Right.
are of the community.
But it doesn't depend on the permits, what we need from
Well, we could get permits for this work. It doesn't mean we have to do it. For instance, we could get a permit. We get permits to put in 3 new barns, but that doesn't mean we have to spend the money to do it right away.
Wait a minute.
If you're
But
talking about,
what I'm thinking about is retaining walls and roads and things like that.
say it again, please.
Retaining walls and roads and things like that. In order for us to get a permit
Mhm.
to have these capabilities, you bet we've got to make commitments, right?
Yes, there are some things we can't put off, but I'm saying there are some things, like
Oh.
maybe some of the buildings
Oh, yeah,
that we could
yeah.
put off
Okay.
to a phase two.
Yeah.
And I use the barns as an example because it's an easy example. And maybe this is, it would be helpful if we had a good understanding, and I don't remember going back to May, sorry, I didn't look it up again recently, but 2 things drove our road configuration. One was site circulation, keeping vehicles out of the program area, and the other is satisfaction of the fire marshal. And what I don't remember, and I wish I'd looked up again, was if the staff recommendation had been approved by the fire marshal, and I just don't remember.
Oh, say that again. What is your questions?
I said, what I don't remember is if the staff recommendation from May 14, if that
Yes.
road configuration had
That-
been approved by the fire marshal.
Yes, that's what they asked us to do. And we actually been trying to push back because they're asking for 20-foot feet wide road. And there's some significant, from our perspective, some significant impact to the area. So we've been trying to push back on that requirement, but we have not been successful. But in the costs we provided to the board at the May 14 meeting included the road that is meeting the fire department's requirement.
Okay. So yeah, the cost I think was clear, just like whether the fire department or fire marshal had
Yeah.
approved that.
That is their ask, their requirement, yeah.
Okay. And I had another question about water, and I can't remember right offhand what it was. So I'll pass on that for right now. So where does that leave us? Are we going to spend just a handful of minutes and say, hey, this, not that, with the public that's here? So we have our marching orders when we come together.
Yeah, I guess I'm almost there, Karen, but I'm just, I just think we should clarify in phase. I really like Craig's idea about kind of doing using a phase approach. And that phase 0, are we all clear what we can do? Well, even from a program and options. I mean, I heard comments, from some of the working group members and others is that, gosh, we can start offering programs right away. I just would want to make sure, given the use permits and everything like that, we just know what we can do.
I think it's not strictly right away because there's a certain amount of cleanup and safety work that has to be done.
Okay.
There are details about vetting the volunteers and things like this that have
Yeah.
to be taken care of, right?
Yeah,
We want everything to be handled cleanly, but I think essentially you can start quickly.
Right.
And we don't see any barrier to starting up quickly given those things.
So what we would need then would be board approval to, if you will, free up staff and provide the funding to allow us to proceed through phase 0, right?
Yes, and when it comes to the nonprofit and some of the volunteer efforts, I don't know, is the nonprofit gonna be in charge of the programming activities? Or is some of that gonna be independent, or how is that gonna happen? And there are legal requirements too about adults working with children and.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I mean.
how
There are, so yeah, the basic idea is the nonprofit would be managing that. But the initial leadership of the events or the programs would be very heavily volunteer based. And like you say, there are requirements for that, particularly people who are working with children. We do want all of that to be handled cleanly, right? So there's certainly some startup effort that has to take place. Some things do have to be put in place, but and in addition, there's the certain amount of site cleanup that we would want. But I don't think there are any fundamental barriers to getting started quickly, right?
I'm still not clear though if if even the volunteer efforts, are those going to be managed by the nonprofit or how?
That's the idea, yeah.
Okay, so all the volunteer efforts would be, okay, that's helpful.
Yep.
And the nonprofits ready to, let's assume it's Friends, they're ready to amend their charter and attract new board members and all that sort of stuff. So they're ready to take this on. In what kind of time frame? Is why I'm asking about, we're talking about, we could do this tomorrow. So what's the time frame, you think? I'm not asking for a January 22nd. I'm asking for, like, is it 3 to 5 month time frame, or what do you think?
I think we'd really have to get that that answer from Friends.
Mhm. Okay.
I mean, I think our working group could estimate how quickly that could come together, but I think it would be better if Friends spoke to that.
Yeah, I just didn't know if they had informed. I know your group shouldn't be directing them, or I just didn't know if that group had informed you or not, informed your group.
I think the official word that we have from Friends is the same letter that you
Nothing beyond
you
that.
got today.
Okay.
So,
All right,
okay.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, we do, I think we all have people from Friends in our groups, but, they're speaking as individuals in the working groups and not speaking for Friends.
Well, although, Marcy, so you're secretary, did anybody did you want to provide any kind of an update or anything since? Why not? Yeah.
Marcy Colonna, Secretary and Friends. I'm going to read a letter that was penned yesterday by our group At the ad hoc committee on Thursday, October 10th, at the Midpeninsula Open Space, several participants asked if Friends of Bear Creek Stables would consider taking on the task of using our 501(c) organization to manage the Bear Creek Stables and implement a set of public outreach programs in the manner particularly outlined in a series of public documents produced at the ad hoc committee. After a discussion, our board unanimously approved the following motion on October 15, 2024. Motion, Friends of Bear Creek Stable agrees to explore working with the community at large and Midpen to put into place a long-term agreement between Midpen and the Friends of Bear Creek Stables. The agreement would be consistent with the recommendations made by the ad hoc committees. This is a monumental task for the Friends of Bear Creek, the community at large, and a significant investment by Midpen. During the initial phase of working together, we will be reaching out to the greater community to accomplish the goals of the ad hoc committee in alignment with the mission of Midpen Regional Open Space. Sincerely, Marcy Colonna, Secretary of Bear Creek. Members Rick Pardiff, Melanie Moore, Karen Reed, and Peggy Kaufman. We would like to do it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks. So I've got an idea, but Suzanne.
If the ad hoc committee want to at tonight's meeting to narrow down a couple options, I'm happy to help facilitate that conversations and use the list that was generated by the working group that Director Holman presented earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a nice job to identify kind of the differences between their recommendations or the alternative compared to the repair plans, and we can just focus on those items.
Right.
And then you can direct staff to say we can look at both and move forward and do the cost analysis, and then want to see both. So we can do that if at your discretion.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking is, let's present to the board, here's what options phase 0 would look like, and here's what we need you, the board, to approve. And so these are the programs. This is what would have to happen at the site. This is what we would need Friends to be able to do. And therefore, this is what the offering would be during phase 0, which is what, 24 to 30 months or something like that. Yeah. And then, okay, board, thank you very much. Now, on to phase 1. Once we hit phase 1, here are the decisions that here are the options that we have, and we will make decisions at that time, because there may be some changes between now and then. And it could be, and this is where maybe we use some time tonight to come up with, hey, here's the two or three different options from a site point of view that we would consider to do for phase 1. Does that make sense? No? Mike, what's wrong with that? I think that's Mike. He's behind sunglasses. I think it's Mike.
There, I need to be able to see, and these are the only glasses I brought tonight, so I'm handicapped no matter what. The reason I'm shaking my head is, remember that phase 0 is the period of time that staff has to prepare all the documents and everything else to submit for permits and the use and everything else before we can start phase 1. So if you haven't authorized them to proceed with
fair.
phase 1, they are not going to be able to do their job. Now I'll let Brian talk.
I don't know if Mike heard us whispering, but yes. So you have to have a plan that you're presenting to planning.
Okay,
I'm-
so we need board to decide not only, yeah, go with phase 0, but we need board to say, and this is the option we want for phase 1.
Right, which
Okay,
is, yeah,
that's fine.
basically the design group options.
Okay,
We do have a few information on phase 0 too, so we looked at it. We can definitely fit in 40 paddocks. I know there was a question about how many paddocks would be available. We could squeeze in a few more, but I think that's a good conservative number, given, other activities that you might
Right.
want to take place up there. And the big ring would just be, we would be limited to just adding and grading out sand when that was necessary, not a like huge revamp
Right.
of it. And then we talked about, rocking the road.
okay. So Brian, basically, this will be staff driven. Option 0, as far as what needs to be done there, is very much staff telling us what needs to be done.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
I would say no, because we discussed with the working group. We heard the discussions throughout this process.
Yeah.
So the activities that we propose agreed by the working groups results of the discussions and recommendations from the working group. It's not staff driven, and
Oh,
we just
sorry.
looked at. But staff did look at, is it implementable? And that's what we
Sorry.
agree on.
That's
Yeah.
that's what I meant. It'd be definitely driven by what the committee has come up with. But
Right.
to me, that's pretty straightforward. To staff say, okay, if that's what you want,
Yes.
this is what it's going to cost. This is how
Yes.
much time
Yeah.
it's going to take.
And-
This is the impact on staff.
Yeah, and those are the activities that we can do without,
Yeah, that's-
the use
sorry.
permit.
That's
Yeah.
what I meant. Yeah.
So, and then, okay, back to the options, and then when I say carry those options, it's really carry it to November 20th. So, because right now, we do not have some cost information that may help you to narrow down to one option. So I'm saying that we can do some cost analysis if certain elements that you want to see both, and you want to see the cost and cost for those the options, and we can do that between October 30th to when we present the report to the board.
Right.
And then the board, if they choose to support your recommendation, they also have to pick one option
right.
for us to move forward, so we can get the permits for those activities.
Can I suggest a way forward here, which is phase 1, there's, to use that term again, there's violent agreement on what the site group is proposing with what staff had proposed. And what I'm going to suggest is, seems like we keep losing more people. Maybe they're just done back there and hopefully eating guacamole and chips. But is anybody here shy? Yeah? Well, get over it. What I was going to suggest is that, just as a thought, is if we go down this list, and if anybody objects to anything being taken forward, to say yay, hey, whatever, and then state why, and we can have that discussion rather than, it seems like that might be a quick way to expedite what our group writes up for the board. Does that make sense? Or would y'all be willing to do that?
So are you coming up with one option? Is that what you're trying to do?
No. What I'm trying to do is, because the site planning group came up with alternatives, an alternative to some of staff's recommendations. And so what I'm going to suggest is, because staff's recommendations are going to go in the staff report. So
No, Suzanne, I don't think so.
No, staff has already presented our recommendation, which is in the May 14 report. This is going to be your recommendations. And for the November 20th board report, there will be a section, it's about your recommendations.
but
So,
excuse me for interrupting, but some of staff's recommendations from May 20 or May 14 have been altered.
right, so that will be your recommendations.
So
And
that will be included as our recommendation?
yes, it's
even though it's
your
staff's
recommendation.
recommendation? Okay.
No, it's not staff recommendation, but you have asked staff feedbacks on your recommendation.
right.
We are providing that feedback.
That's a good clarification then for me, anyway. Okay, all right. So can we, I think I've captured it all here, and if I haven't captured it all,
Yeah.
yes. I'm sorry.
Brian, it's Peggy Kaufman. I thought one of the goals was to minimize how many things that would take longer to get permits and have to need permits, more permits, questions would be out there because that will delay when phase one actually starts, which increases costs over time. So, I mean, that's just, is that good information also somehow going to be clear before we go voting? This is what we want. This, we
Well,
won't know the cost, and now we won't know the timeline
don't.
either.
We don't know the cost, we won't know the timing tonight either. What we did focus on was how much of a change would require a restart as opposed to an amendment. And we don't know that level, that threshold either. But remember, I said last week that construction drawings haven't even been drawn for the plan that was presented on May 14. So that has to happen yet, no matter what. Staff will correct me if I'm wrong, but construction drawings haven't been executed yet.
That's correct. Yeah.
So that process still has to happen, no matter what we do going forward. Well, we're voting on what do we want to have looked at. We're not voting on, we want this to happen. We're voting on what do we want the board to look at. Does that help? Okay, does that make sense? So, so do you want to go down the list? Are you going to go down the list or have a choice?
I think one thing we should do is pick out, do we really have to go down all parts of this, or are there a few key things that we want to talk about?
It's probably going to be fast, actually.
I'm sorry?
I don't think it's going to take a lot of time.
I don't
Yeah.
either.
Yeah. If you allow me to facilitate this conversation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Do you want to keep going or do you need to take a break? Yeah, we need a small break. Yeah.
Okay. 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 Quick break then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
5 minutes?
5 minutes. Yeah. Okay. Are we ready?
Please go ahead.
Okay. So we will go over the list. This list identified the elements for each phase for the stables. And then also it's color coded when it's the item is in blue, that represents that there's some discrepancy between staffs or the repair plans versus the working group's recommendations, primarily for phase one. So we already established that phase two, we're very consistent. The recommendation from the working group and staff evaluations of all those proposed improvement, we pretty aligned and we feel like we can implement that. So we can move on to phase 1. And for phase 1, right now here, the first item is the Bristway bond demo, and the ad hoc committee's recommendation is to retain some elements for reuse. And I wanted to clarify what elements are you thinking about will reuse in here.
So if you look at the barn, and I'm terrible with directions, but if you look at the barn and the part that has the doors on it.
Yeah.
Those really sweet doors where the animals were behind those.
Yeah.
That section, that wall section is really cool. There might be some other aspects on the cladding.
Yeah.
That might be good for reuse, but salvage, of course, but that particular section for reuse would be really cool.
Yeah, I think staff is fine with, I don't think we have significant concern with that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And then
the one that we had mentioned was the acorn pole. There's the acorn woodpecker granary. It's the roughly sort of telephone pole that's built into the building.
Oh. Yeah.
I mean, it's it's a very interesting feature, right? It's
right.
The intersection of nature and the stables.
So can we add that to the list?
It's your recommendations,
Yeah,
and then
I don't know what the implications of doing that are, but it's a feature that is very interesting. So
right. Okay. You can add to the list, and then the next one is the demo of the existing round pen. Oh.
Demo the hay barn.
Oh, hay barn, I'm sorry, hay barn. And I think staff understand that recommendation is to really decentralize the storage facility. I think we feel that a centralized facility is more functional, but decentralized also has its benefits. I don't think we have significant issue with that as well.
Can I actually suggest that with this item, that we ignore the note because it's actually captured under the hay barn discussion?
Yeah.
And it keeps it simpler. So we're all in agreement that we are going to lose the hay barn near the round pen. So we're all in agreement.
Yeah, we're in agreement with that. Yes.
Okay. All right,
yes.
good.
Okay. And then, okay, so here we can definitely look into preserving the chimney. And that this is a new additional item, not in the repair plan, but we can take a look at the cost implication. It's relatively small items. We can carry that into as part of your recommendation, and we'll provide a cost.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting here. I apologize for
that. No, that's fine.
So just to clarify, so in the create program area, that was also intended that retain the chimney if we can stabilize it, and you're open to doing that, which you are. But we were talking about also, it was brought up previously about creating a platform basically there to create so is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and staff's good with that?
Yeah, we'll look into, and we'll provide a cost for that.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, and then the next one is the repair plan calls for removal of the casita, and the ad hoc's recommendation is to retain that for programming use. So again, this is different from the repair plan, and then we can carry this forward, also provide a cost analysis for retaining that structure for programming use. And actually I wanted to clarify what kind of programming use you are anticipating at this location. Are you asking to completely rehabilitate this structure to allow indoor use?
Definitely not rehabilitate the structure.
Okay.
You know, there would be significant costs associated with that, so definitely not that. As I mentioned earlier, a report that was done talked about this structure being substantial. I don't remember the exact words that were used, but it was a substantial structure, 2 feet thick wall, concrete walls, and it was very stable in that report. So what we're thinking of is just clean it up, get rid of the plumbing so we don't have any of those issues. Maybe do a repair to the roof. There's one corner of the roof that has some issues. And we've talked about just thinking creatively, you know, we've talked about some other things that might or might not be feasible, like taking the roof off and leaving it an open air space. Thinking creatively, but I'd say for estimating purposes, just repair the roof and clean it up.
Okay. Yes, we
Is
can.
that good with our group? Is that,
Okay.
okay? Good,
We
thanks.
can provide costs to that as well. The caretaker house, this is about the locations. And I will recommend that we provide costs to these options. And we already have a cost for the existing location. And then we can present both data for the board's considerations. Because here we anticipate it's not going to be significant cost saving compared to the new recommended location versus the existing repair plan locations. It's really down to which one is better suited for programming and long-term operations. So, but we will provide both data points and for the board's considerations. Okay.
One more time, I'm going to interrupt.
No, that's
I
fine. This is
apologize.
why we're talking about it.
Water storage. A question that's come up in our group is, and there's Bob. Bob's our water expert here. So a question is, and I'll try to get it right because this is not my area, is could there be an alternative compared to what you're nodding your head like you already know about this? Could we provide steel tanks that are
Smaller?
congregated and
Yeah.
put together as
Yeah,
a
yeah.
cost savings, and what size really is
will-
necessary?
Yes, we can look into that as well. I think it was on our list that we said we will look into it. We will look into if instead of one large storage tank, and we look at if we use a smaller size tank, but it's a group of smaller size tank, and we want to see if that from operational perspective and from regulatory permitting perspective, and then also the cost perspective, if that is viable suggestions, and we will look at that as well.
That's terrific. I didn't know you were prescient, but thank you.
Okay, and then the restroom is, again, we will do the cost analysis for the new location, and then we'll provide the cost for the existing locations, and so you can have both data for comparisons. Did we talk about? Oh. ADA parking, it's the same thing. I think the ADA parking has to go with where the restrooms is going to be located because we have to provide accessible path between the ADA parking and the restroom, and we're trying to minimize the distance between the two features. So that will come with kind of the cost estimate along with the new location, and then we'll compare that with the existing site plan. Yeah. Okay, and then the new barn, the hay barn, we talk a little bit about that, and we will the working group's recommendation is to decentralize the storage facility, and instead of one big one, they recommend multiple small ones, and we will do the cost analysis for the small for this decentralized approach, and then we'll provide, and we have the number for one new hay barn, and then you can do that comparisons.
And one more interruptions, apologies. So there's been conversation about how many boarded horses will be there on site. And so it could be that it's 2 barns in phase 1 and 3 barns maybe in phase 2 or maybe never. So I don't know how you look at that, but just putting it out there.
So we will, I think we will do, so we will provide the cost for what you're recommending, which is 3, right? 3 smaller one. And if the decision later is that we don't need to build 3 all at one time, we only need 2, then it will be just cost less than plan.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah. And it's not a huge cost for a barn.
No.
It's $65,000. So it's not, you know.
Thank you. As I said, smaller hay barns will require fire sprinklers, the 2-hour saturation, and the CFF is a certain amount is driving this 36,000-gallon tank, which if we size that down, the sensitivity is it drives a much more expensive item and the relief from a much more expensive item.
Okay, so I understand your reasoning behind reducing the size of the bond, and not only to reduce the construction costs for the bond, also the potential some water infrastructure requirements. So that is something that we need to confirm with the county. We're not sure if we will get the answer before the board meeting, but we will definitely put those assumptions in there, and maybe we'll provide 2 costs if assuming the fire suppression requirements stay the same, and this is the cost. And if the fire suppression requirement reduce, so we don't need a sprinkler system, and this is the cost. So then you have all the data. Yeah. Because we are not absolutely 100% sure if that's the case, that you can eliminate the fire sprinkler requirement for the smaller bond.
So on this one, my impression, Peggy and Jenny, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like this suggestion was pretty well received, certainly in our working group.
Yeah.
So to me, it seemed like something where we might be able to figure out, is this just a good thing overall?
Yeah.
And, it's not necessarily like some of the others where we might need to really look at the programming trade-offs. I think maybe that's already been done.
Yeah. So
my sense was that the people in our working group felt if there was a cost savings, which it seemed like there probably would be, then they liked the idea of going to the smaller hay barns. Right. I'm just saying.
Are you suggesting then that we could take the 2,000 square foot barn off and save staff some work?
I think they still have work to understand the. Basically, it's already costed.
Yeah,
right?
it's already costed. So we will provide the cost for the smaller bonds, a selection of smaller bonds, and then we will see if we can find out the fire sprinkler system requirements. If we can, we just give you both numbers.
I was thinking, based on Bob's question, I was thinking that maybe what wasn't known, correct me if I'm wrong, I was thinking what maybe wasn't known was how much of water storage the 2,000 square foot barn was demanding. And if we take the 2,000 square foot barn off the table, then you don't have to do that research. Did I understand? I was trying to save some work. I was trying to save you some work.
Yeah.
We would never argue not to have any water holding. We love water holding, but as far as the requirement and its linkage
Especially driving almost $1 million.
Okay, so we will look into a little bit to see if those assumption is accurate and if there's any cost savings can be realized. Okay, so I think that's most of the list, and we're down to the probably the most significant items, which is the road. And as I mentioned earlier, this one is, and then also recognized by Director Holman, this is probably the most significant difference between the repair plan and the committee's recommendations. And the reasons we feel that this is significant and we want to provide you our feedback is that this recommendation will significantly increase the work that is included in the project, and it will create more impact to the environment because the upper row have to be widened to 24 from 8, approximately 8 feet right now, and have to be widened to 24 feet. And it's a pretty long stretch. And we still have to widen the lower row from, if we keep, let's say if we say that we only keep it for one direction, we still have to widen that lower row from existing 12 to 13 feet to 16 feet. That is the minimum requirement for a single direction row. So that will not only have cost impact for construction, it will have impacts on design and permitting as well. So that's why staff's recommendation is, again, recognize the reason behind this, which we acknowledge that we recommend to face this improvement and move the widening of the upper row into phase 2. So if we, and we can provide that cost implications as part of our analysis for this proposal.
So if you're recommending widening the upper road into phase 2, so what would happen regarding road work in phase 1?
Phase 1, we will be widening the lower road to meet the minimum fire department requirements.
Susanna, does that impact then how we're allowed to use the site? We would, by not having that upper road wider, would that minimize basically, the use permits that we would be
So
awarded?
the reason behind the widening of the upper row is to allow more easy access for the border, and then separate so
Right.
now the border gets the two-way road.
Right.
It get to the
Right.
upper arena, right? So and the lower row is primarily serve the programming area.
Right.
Our current plan is to widen the lower row
Right.
to surface the programming area,
Mhm.
and then also meets the fire department requirements. So our repair plan supports all the programming needs and also meets the fire department requirement.
I see.
Let me add in there, and maybe Pam hasn't gotten to speak tonight. Maybe Pam can speak to this, or Mike again. But just to be really clear, it's like, so the widening of the upper road is to keep vehicular traffic out of the program area, to keep it out of there. We believe it does satisfy fire department requirements. And while it is a cut into the hillside, it's also very much disturbed earth in that location. So we're sensitive to all of those things.
Is there any analysis of how much traffic there is there, and how inefficient is that upper road as a one-lane, two-way road? Or also how much traffic, if the alternative were to say to have border traffic either go in or out on that road and then use the lower road past the Tevis barn for the other direction. I'm just wondering if do we have any understanding of how much actual impact that is on the lower area? Or if you're just using the upper road, how much, difficulty is there in using it as a two-way?
I'm looking at how if we have that analysis. No one is volunteering to come up. I don't think we have that information. Yeah. So, and just to move this process along, and my recommendation is to just allow us to do that analysis and bring the number back for you. Yeah.
And in our phase 0, we do kind of what you're indicating is we have one-way traffic in and out on the roads. I think probably everybody's aware that the condition of the upper road is pretty poor right now. People bottom out on it and that sort of thing. So
Yes.
I think staff was indicating they would do maintenance on that road
Yes.
in phase 0
Yes.
anyway.
Yes, that's in recognition of that we recommending delaying the widening of the upper road to phase 2. As part of phase 0, we will be doing some maintenance work to improve the road to allow winter access. And then we also, as part of that work, we wanted to see if it's feasible. We don't know if that's feasible or not, but we want to see if we can provide a couple turnout along upper road to allow potentially that for them to have two-way limited access. That is not a guarantee. We just wanted to look into it because the hillside is, we don't think it's very stable, and we wanted to be really careful about any grading work in that area. Okay, so I think that's it for phase 1, and if we can, like I said, we can do the cost analysis for these options. I think that's it.
All right, so then I think we're back to our previous discussion. Or were there any other questions about that?
So does, Suzanne, sorry, does that mean we don't really have different options for phase 1? I think we just agreed this is the plan. From a site point of view, this is the plan, right?
Well, you can, I would strongly recommend you to consider the upper row after this site plan versus the original replay plan. And we can, you have those both number, and then we can present that to the board. And since we do not have unless you decided that, actually I'm taking back, because we won't have the number until the meeting, and you won't have the data to kind of, the ad hoc won't have the data to make a call and make a final decision which way you want to recommend. So we'll carry those information forward to the full board.
So on November 20th, it sounds like the board might be given 2 options for phase 1, right? Yeah. And it's basically the road options. Is that what I heard? Everything else?
No, it'll be, no, the casita, it'll be, for instance, the casita is like, do we retain it, do we not? Where the location is of the restroom, the caretaker house, and the ADA parking, the staff recommendation, and then what we're recommending in terms of locations, that will be different, and then the
road.
The
The barn.
location.
Yeah.
And those would be alternatives.
And the road.
And the road, yes.
Yeah.
You'd already mentioned that.
Yeah.
So
Yes. So what we can do is that we can, in our cost analysis table, we'll have 3 columns.
Yeah.
One is the repair plan columns,
right.
and then one is the working group
Right.
recommendation.
Okay.
And then the third column, so it could be the hybrid, because
Right.
why I say that is because there was some recommendation that we actually fully support their recommendations. For example, the relocation of the parking area of the landslide area. We believe that is a very good suggestion and improvement from the repair plan, and that it's potentially can realize some cost saving. So that could be kind of the hybrid column, and then you can have that for your considerations.
It does feel like we still have a lot of choices there. So I think maybe maybe we need to try and narrow some of these down based on I don't know if we can get to some agreement on are all of these things necessary to leave as options.
Well, we're only looking at 3 options: the May 14, the May 14, what did you call it, Susanna?
Your
The
full
rec-
recommendation.
recommendation that staff concurs with, and then the alternative. It's only three choices. So I don't know what you'd want to
Right.
eliminate.
You're saying you would lump all of the alternatives together as just one option, not consider things individually.
Like the casita, like the restroom, like, because you said there's multiple decisions.
Yeah. So
I don't want the
they can look at the bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can look at the bottom line. So we can give them your repair plan. You have the number, and then this working group recommended site plan option. They can also look at the bottom line, and then that's just my recommend. I just thinking out loud right here, because we can have the third column is that there's some that we do agree and we fully support the recommendation from the working group, and those potentially generate cost savings. So we can have that. Some of them we feel okay, but there's some that we feel strongly concerned.
So I guess I have a specific example. So there's a proposal to change the road layout, widen the upper road, and there's a proposal to move the caretaker cottage and ADA facilities. Are those tied together, or are they separate?
They will tie to the working group recommendations. But if you dive into the detail, you can still I think we can still provide line item for a specific element, right? That is how you get to the bottom line.
But then we're back in this complicated mix and match that Kurt's referring to. Right?
But if you're wanting to say you don't want to, Kurt, if you're wanting to say like you don't want the board to have to make a dozen decisions, and I'm making up the dozen. The caretaker house, the restroom, and the ADA parking they're either over here or they're over here. It's really kind of one decision. Do I have that right? So yeah, it's really one decision.
Which
I'm Warren. So one of the reasons we looked really hard at the site plan, because we saw that we have $4 million. This thing costs 10. This isn't going to happen. What can we do to have the same product, safe, efficient, and save some money? If we just leave it the way it is now, site and staff worked very hard, put all this together. Sadly, we came up short. So we decided, what can we do to make things more economical and maybe make sense? One of the things was to take the caretaker and the ADA restrooms and put them closer to the septic tank. It's about 400 lineal feet of sewer line. It's about 5 feet deep. So I don't know if you've ever taken a shovel out to Bear Creek, but you don't just dig in the sand. You're going to come through boulders and trees and all kinds of things. Our charter, and we took it really seriously, was try to save money. So when you come in to read your report, it was 10 million. Oh, now it's 9 million. Great. That doesn't help us very much at all. The same thing with Mike on his roadway. We took a couple dozen, three excavators and road designers out with us to look at how can we contour, how can we eliminate retaining walls where we can. Took their advice. We didn't make it all up ourselves, but the whole reasoning was to try to drive costs down, keep program areas open, keep the barn open, and everything that we've shown in our site plans. I mean, we've spent, as everybody knows, and everybody in the whole room has worked hard and fast on it. So it's not really just, oh, let's just see if we move the hand on the clock from 2 to 4, what happens? It's all kind of a working piece that goes together. And that's one of the reasons why we're interested in costing. If we can, maybe $50,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but if you don't have it, it's a lot. So any little penny we can squeeze out of it, our group has taken that to heart. So I know it sounds maybe trivial or that, but we're trying not to shortcut it, and we're trying to understand, can we glean, spend our money the best way we can, because we know we can't go back and get any more. And we know we're stretched as thin as we can be, and staff knows that as painfully well as anybody. So I just hope you can consider that really is what we're not trying to be contrary, and we're not trying to make life miserable for everybody, but we're trying to come just a meeting of minds that we can find a way that go through, and because we're not cost estimators, sadly, or schedulers, we don't know the answers, and you do. So that's why we're really asking for your help on that.
Yes, for sure. And then we trying our best to support you as much as we can. Yeah. And then also provide our feedback as honest as we can.
So I'm a little confused, Greg. Maybe you can straighten me out. I was following we got May 14th, understand that. We've got what the committee came up. We've got that column, understand that. And I think, Pam, that's just what you're referring to. That's what you did. I'm intrigued by the third column or fourth column is the hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
Who determines what goes in the hybrid column? Or is that what we just?
So it could be you, and then we can present staff, because I was thinking the hybrid is the items that staff like support and think that those are really good suggestions, and definitely it's a improvement from the repair plan and meets all the goals as well. So that's the third columns. And I agree. I understand Director Gleason's concerns, because that particular item that is probably very important to the programming group is the location of the caretaker house and the restrooms. And I think based on we will do more detailed cost estimate, but right now, just based on what we know, we just don't see there's a significant cost saving between the new locations versus the existing locations. So if the cost is not a significant decision factor, then it's really down to which one is better for programming and better for operations. So that's, I think, Director Gleason's concern about this. The 3-column doesn't differentiate that. So, but if that is the only items that we're concerning about, that I think if the board support your recommendations at a high level, and that's a detail that we can probably work it out in the design phase. Or, yeah, right? Look at my design too.
Did that clear it up for you?
Who decides what goes in the third column?
Who decide?
Who
Uh,
decides what goes into the third column?
I think staff will, staff will decide because we will be picking the items that we think that it's improvement from the repair plan, that it's based on the recommendation from the working group.
Okay.
I think I need that run by again. So one column is going to be the May 14.
Yes,
Another column is going to be the hybrid.
yes.
That would be the second column, right? Which would be like how the May 14 has been altered based on ad hoc input.
No, that's not the hybrid. That's the second column is the working group recommendations, right? So all these items that in blue is a different deviation from the repair plan, and then we will cost that out and have the bottom line.
So okay. So the hybrid is the staff and ad hoc, though.
Yes, so
Okay.
it's kind of like the items that we agree.
Okay. Okay, good. And then the ad hoc will be essentially the alternatives. Pursuant to this document that we just went through.
Oh, yes, so that's the one that you recommend as a group, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. That's just 3 columns.
I think that's about it.
I mean, the other thing is if you're not like comfortable saying this is the ad hoc's recommendation, the 2 alternatives could be both forwarded to the full board for consideration.
Yeah, I guess I mean, we're seeing a set of recommendations from the working group. And I'm not sure, I mean, currently, I don't think there are actually recommendations from the whole ad hoc, right? I think some of them, we don't know quite what to make of, how to weigh one option against the other.
Right, and you won't have all of that information till the full board meeting, so that might be a reason why you just forward 2 alternatives to the repair plan.
Oh, okay.
No, I would object to that. There's been an awful lot of work. Our charge was the site plan. We've spent weeks, months on developing this. I would truly object to having just 2 alternatives, just the May 14 and the.
No, I'm sorry, that's
I
not
don't
what I
think
meant.
that's what Brian
So
was
the
saying.
repair plan, which, actually was developed way before May 14th, but the repair plan, that's an alternative that's already on the list of alternatives that was presented on May 14th, and that'll go to the board. What I'm saying is you could forward 2 alternatives, whatever the final kind of the blue written alternatives on the screen, and then also the alternatives that were also come up by the working group, but that staff weighed in that those were feasible and could lower the cost and have less environmental impact. So that would be the 3 columns repair plan and then 2 alternatives.
I appreciate that. I thought we were trying to reduce it to 2
No,
columns.
no,
and that's why I
absolutely
was
not.
like,
No.
oh dear.
What Brian described is basically what I proposed, but I understand it still doesn't get to Director Gleason's concerns about that particular item because the item, it may not be, if you look at the cost alone, it may not be able to differentiate which option is better. So that I think that is Director Gleason's concern.
I mean, my actual concern is I'm suspecting that when we look at the upper road option, it's going to come up with a cost that we, and maybe schedule impact that we don't like. So if we lump other options that we might want to consider in with that, I'm just worried about those getting ruled out, you know, without consideration on their own. But I also don't want to create a whole smorgasbord of options. Right?
Can I ask Pam or Mike, hey, is there anything that could be lumped with the road, upper road development? I'm just concerned that we're, I think I understand what you're saying is that you don't want the upper road to be eliminated because stand on its own, it might be too much of a cost implication. Is that what you're thinking?
I'm concerned that it will be that way, so that if you just create an option that has that plus other things that we might want, that whole option might get eliminated because of the impact of the road. Right. Whereas, you know, for example, if you took some of these things and you created a, I don't know, different hybrid option, then maybe they would, you know, maybe we would choose them.
So you handed me the mic. Please let me speak. I think what Craig is trying to get to is let's let staff go do the cost options that they've proposed. We have a hybrid, the third column, that is sitting there that has all of the things that we have agreed upon in it to date. When we get to the final point and we have all the costing information that's been made available to us, I would recommend that on that day, if we choose, we can say, we really looked at all of this, but we like what the ad hoc committee came up with on this line item. Can we move it to the hybrid so that at that point in time, you can look at the 3 or 4 items that we're looking at and move 1 or 2 of them back into the hybrid category to get something that is better than the repair plan, but not all of the ad hoc recommendations. And I think that is an easy way, once we have the data as to what the individual things cost and what the individual impacts are, that the board of directors should be able to put their fingers around relatively easily and say, if we move A to B, or we move item 1 to column 3 and item 5 to column 3, we have a real great plan. And I think I would recommend gathering the data, because until we have the data, we can't make a decision, and then keep the hybrid column to where it may have 1 or 2 shaded spots in it that could be pulled out of either of the other 2 columns.
The problem is, and I'm understanding it, and sorry if I'm being dense here, the problem as I understand it though, is we're not going to have any of that information until we see it in the staff report. So we're not going to have the opportunity to mix and match.
So I think Martin is suggesting those mix and match is going to happen at the board meeting after the board decided that they support your recommendation. If they don't support the recommendation, that would be a moot point, right? So if they suggest they support your recommendation, and maybe it's a minor tweak to the information that's presented, the final site plan, then the staff will be the marching order for staff to develop or further develop site plan, complete the permit process.
Well, but wait a minute. Mike assumed we won't have that data until, I think you said until
November 20.
When would we have the data? Because would there be enough time for us to make the decisions that he talked about?
No, we won't see. We won't get your plan until October 30th, and then we only have a really short period of time to generate those data, and then go along with the staff report for the November 20th meeting.
But aren't we tonight indicating what we want to have costed? And
Yeah, I'm think we've got column 1, we've got column 2. we've got
No, no, we
most.
don't have column 2. That's what we need to work on. Column 2 is their recommendation, all those
Well,
items.
Okay, sorry, it's not costed out, but we've got the items.
You got the column that we can
We've
start
got the-
working on,
We got
yes,
the column 2, we just have to cost it, not
Right,
just, I mean, we
yeah.
have to cost that out.
right.
Right.
Um,
Column 3, sounds like we got most of it, but there's like 3, what do you call them, gray areas that we would need. I would think, well, I don't know. Wouldn't we have those before November 20th? So that we could give, we could give staff direction?
No, they're
No?
asking to have that data
Oh.
before October 30th, right?
So maybe one alternative is some of these items are maybe not exactly cost neutral, but closer to cost neutral. So suppose we just had the one item on the location of the ADA facilities and the caretaker cottage. It would be possible for us in our recommendation to say, if this item turns out to be cost neutral, then we prefer it this way or that way, right? Or close enough to cost neutral. So I wonder if we could simplify the hybrid option in that way by looking at these individual items and saying, if this is not fundamentally changing the cost of the solution, then we prefer it this way or that way.
Okay, yeah, okay. And you'll ask staff to make that recommendations or you do that for the column 3.
What I was saying was that if we could take some of these items and say, our preference is, you have option A or option B for the individual item, like the location of the caretaker cottage. And if we look at them and we say, well, we really have a preference, say from a programming perspective for one or the other, then we could say to staff in our recommendation, if you find that these are cost neutral, then you can put our preference in, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes, we can do it. And then to get back to the questions about when we can get the cost data to you, if you agree tonight, the 3-column approach, and we can technically, technically speaking, we can start the work tomorrow, right? But it's gonna take some time, and I don't know how much time we need to generate those information. I cannot guarantee that we can provide you those information before you finalize your report. So that is, I cannot guarantee that. Yeah, we know that we have to provide those report, those data, and incorporate those data into the board report, which we have a little bit more time. Yeah, but I cannot guarantee that we can get it to you by, like, we only have 2 weeks left to October 30th.
So I want to let Karen state her concern here.
Yeah, thanks. I still like the 3-column thing, and it's,
I didn't change the 3 columns.
well, but what I understood was, and we've been here 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm getting a little ditzy, but what I understood was if there's a preferred location for the caretaker house, and if the cost is cost neutral, then just go ahead and put it in basically the hybrid column. And did I understand
No.
what you were saying?
I think you're saying that you're gonna give us directions if it's cost neutral, if that item ended up as very cost neutral, and then you're gonna give us direction that if that should go into this hybrid column or not.
But when would we see the cost to be able to do that?
No, so you're gonna give us directions. If it's cost neutral, then which one you prefer to put it on the 3rd column. But you
And-
don't need to know the cost. So if it's cost
And that's what I was saying doesn't work for me.
okay,
It's just like,
that's
if you're
Director
gonna- if
Gleason's
If
suggestion, I
it's gonna
think.
be costed out anyway, I always hate to disagree with Director Gleason, but I disagree on that because I think this isn't brain surgery. I mean, the board is going to be able to, pick and choose and discern.
Okay.
So you're going to the work to do this. Let's present the work to the board and let them decide. Is my thought.
All right.
And we've hit the 3.5 hour mark.
Yes. We need to talk about kind of next steps. If we can agree on kind of your key recommendation, and the remaining work is just to put the report together, then we do not have to. You do not have to schedule another ad hoc meeting like this, and you can schedule. It's still going to be publicly noticed meeting, and then could be an in-person meeting just to allow you the opportunity to work together to put the report together consistent with the recommendations that you all agree on tonight. But if you need another sessions like tonight, then we will have to schedule another one. And that just cuts into your time to prepare your report.
Yeah, I would much prefer that we come out of this meeting needing only the in-person meetings to continue.
We're very close. 3 columns.
And I had thought when we went down the list of these items, I had thought we made all those decisions.
We talk about providing cost, but that there's potentially some elements cost neutral, but has implication on operation and programming. I think that.
Right, but it's still 3 columns.
Yes, 3. I think that's what we're recommending.
Yeah.
3 columns.
Yeah, so it's still 3 columns.
Yes.
So what might be helpful is if there's information that, and we'll do the same thing, if there's information that hasn't been provided to the other ad hocs, if we could have that, would help us facilitate putting together the report that's going to go in the staff report.
Right. So I mentioned at the beginning that our working group has been working on a complete report, and we're intending to publish that in the next couple of days. I think Director Riffle said Monday. For dollar numbers. For dollar numbers. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So there will be that information that we share. I think there might be some other questions that we need to ask to completely understand the pros and cons that are seen by the site working group on some of these different options.
And we have a more complete document as well. We just didn't have time to get it completely updated for tonight's meeting, but this is like the thumbnail that we hoped we could get through tonight and present from tonight along with the site plans. But we have a much more complete one that you're gonna just not want to read right before you go to bed because you're going to be thinking about it all night. So, but it's quite that, meaning that it's quite extensive.
Okay.
Okay, so we have an agreement, right? So we will do when staff do the cost analysis, it will be 3 columns, and 1 column is the repair plan cost, 1 column is the working group recommendation, and then there will be a hybrid column is what we agree on, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like I said, that's maybe certain elements that can be refined, and if the full board supports your recommendation, and then we can talk about it at that meeting. Yeah.
Goodness knows I need to, I don't want to ask this question, but so the site plan has some alternatives. That would be the other column that you mentioned, the working group recommendation or the ad hoc recommendation. Does programming or fundraising have any alternatives that ought to be considered that would affect a schedule such as this?
How I would answer that is, at least from a fundraising point of view, tell us what we have to work with and we'll give you a number. I mean, basically. So I think I'm more for, from a program and site point of view, what can we do? What does the board want to sign off on? Because it's all about cost and it's all about people served. If anything, and then we can build, a funding, if you will, here, then therefore, this is probably the funding, the potential funding that we could raise based on that. So I don't think we should be driving the design.
And the only reason I asked the question is, right answer. The only reason I was asking the question is, if in your explorations, you've learned that, hey, if the arena was covered, for instance, and we haven't talked about that in a long time, but if the arena was covered,
Mhm.
we could really raise a lot more money faster than if it wasn't. So I was asking, in that vein,
Mhm.
is there anything that's been identified as this will help drive fundraising?
Well, let's put it this way. I don't know that there's anything that we could build or you could put in the site plan that would make us so much money that it's, we got to cover that arena. I mean, I think we would probably be able to say, this is how much more money we could raise. But I'm not sure it's, boy, if we need a covered arena right away because they can raise so much more money. I would be doubtful of that. Right.
I think the only things we had were the two things that I mentioned at the beginning, the small animal enclosure.
Yeah.
And the enlarging the lower round pen. And again, those also seem like things that, you could be flexible on timing and conceivably you could go after those through fundraising again. So I think there are degrees of freedom. Yeah, the covered arena gets talked about a lot. I don't think anybody was ready to,
Phase 3.
yes, to put it in phase 1. So I think we can let that go for now.
It was just an example. It was a question I felt like needed to be asked.
I think the general position of the programming team has been that we can work with the site in many different ways, right? We can work with the site in phase 0 and do things that we think are pretty compelling. So, the phase 1 improvements will make it that much better. I think we're okay to go forward with that. I'm certainly in phase 0, but then the phase 1 will make it that much better. Yeah.
Okay.
So one thing that I was trying to get to at the beginning of this discussion was, are there any details about management model or set up a nonprofit or any of these things that we need to decide tonight more than what has been stated? Anything that sort of constitutes a fundamental part of the proposal that should be decided tonight, or is there already enough information wrapped around this so that we can continue forward from here, as Susanna suggested?
Is that the question for staff?
It's a question for anyone.
So I don't think there's anything that needs to be decided tonight. I think in your proposal, you should delineate liability, the operator is accepting liability for the site, those sort of things. Anything that would give assurance to the board or something they would have to be considering of how the liability costs are going to be balanced out. Do you expect the operator to fully bear the cost of ongoing operations? Do you expect any staff? So we haven't talked about those specifics, but those would be doesn't need to be decided tonight, but it'd be good in your report to, you know, what your proposal is so the board can evaluate it.
Right. And I think we may want to have some live discussion with you over that once we've published what we're putting
Sure.
together too. So thank you. Are there any other thoughts on that? Yeah. So then are we done with that item?
I think we kind of mixed the last two items together. So I think staff have clear directions on what we need to do, and then hopefully that's also helpful for you so you can develop your final report. And we also, and that hopefully it's clear that what is going to go into this staff report for November 20th. And again, it's a staff report that we will prepare, staff will prepare, and I kind of give you this idea what is the key elements that make up that staff report. And your final report will be the attachment to the staff report. And then there will be kind of an executive summary or high-level summary of your recommendations that is in the body of the staff report. And then we will also attach the May 14th staff report because it contains all the other options for the board's considerations. And then, so that is the board report. We need to talk about what meetings, how many meetings you need in order for you to compile your report together. And sounds like you all gonna prepare your portions of the report, but you need some time to kind of work together to compile the reports. And as I mentioned, those need to be publicly noticed meeting, but it can be just in person because you not deliberating the recommendations and you're just writing the report to reflect the decision you made tonight.
Right. So I think the timeline for this is really important. And, you know, we've talked about getting more information out. I think there will be a lot of information in our document, and it sounds like a lot of information in the site team's document as well. People need to read those, and I think what we want to do is source questions and comments before coming into that meeting.
Yeah.
So we have a process
Yeah.
where we can send questions to you and then we can get answers, but we need to understand the timeline to get us to at least that first meeting.
Right, right. Yeah.
With time to do that Q&A cycle, at least over a few days.
So sorry, I was trying to look for the phone and look at the calendars. Do you think next Thursday, the 24th, it's good enough time for you to complete your portion of the report, share out, a staff can do that distribution of the information and share with other group. So other working groups report, prepare questions, and if ideally share your questions ahead of that meeting, and then we will convene that report preparation meetings on the 24th. Is that enough time?
It has to be.
I think that's probably a good timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What time would you like to have that meeting?
And this will be low overhead on staff, right? It's a working meeting between the directors and maybe a few selected people from each working
Yeah.
group. Is that correct?
Yeah, we
Okay.
still need a clerk because it's a public meeting, but maybe I can do that. I will be here, just do the roll call and then. and
okay.
then end
I-
the meeting.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're not pulling in more staff than we need
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Yes.
Time.
The 24th? What time?
I would say 6 o'clock because I think it's going to be a long evening.
Okay. All right, so 6 o'clock.
Well, uh, yeah, actually, that's a good point. This staff needs to be here at least for beginning and end. Is that true? Or not?
Yes. Yes, we need to be here.
So afternoon? I mean, it's
Yeah,
would-
sure, that would be better.
I think would afternoon work?
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should make that work.
okay. What time?
2?
Okay,
How about 2?
2 o'clock.
Okay.
okay, thank you. So yes, so that's great. We can set up that, we will notice that meeting, and if you feel like you need more time, then we can decide at the October 24 meeting if you need another meeting before October 30th.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that covers all we want to discuss. We have an item for public comment.
There are currently no public comment.
Okay, thank you. And did we cover everything on item F that you wanted to cover? About the November board meeting?
Okay, so agenda, it will be just, it's a special meeting. It will be just the meeting for your recommendations. Report structure, we kind of talk about the staff report structure, and then you will develop your final report. And if you need like graphic or table generation support from staff, and we can offer that. But you will be the one that, or you group collectively, you'll be writing that final report. I think I covered everything. And maybe, I don't know if you want to talk about at that meeting, I'm sure you wanted to have some remark about the process. And maybe you wanted to be the one to present the recommendation as well. I
Yeah,
don't know if
think-
you need to talk about it right now.
I think we'll want to talk about, whether any working group members can participate in discussion or so some of the similar questions that have come up before.
Right.
But yeah, we don't have to decide that now.
Right. I think that's it.
Okay. Then is there any further ad hoc committee discussion? Okay, then we are adjourned. Thank you very much.